Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2019 MyBroadband Conference. This year has seen many exciting developments in the South African telecommunications market. MTN continued to invest billions in its mobile and fixed line networks and now reigns supreme in network quality in South Africa. MTN's fiber ISP, Supersonic, is also making waves in the broadband market. Liquid Telecom has increased its focus on digital transformation and providing customer-centric products under the new CEO, Rashad Shah. Vodacom is not sitting back. They are aggressively growing their fixed and mobile networks and are ready to launch 5G when spectrum becomes available. Today, South Africa's top telecommunications executives will tell us more about these and other industry topics and shed light on what we can expect to see in the future. The MyBroadband Conference is the premier event of its kind in South Africa and is made possible thanks to the generous sponsorships from our conference partners. MTN is lead sponsor of the 2019 MyBroadband Conference. As the leader in the South African telecommunications market, MTN is a logical partner for the event. MTN is also sponsoring lunch this year. Liquid Telecom partnered with MyBroadband as an event partner. Liquid Telecom is one of South Africa's top telecommunications players. MyBroadband is proud to have them as part of this conference. Liquid Telecom also sponsored the refreshments we just enjoyed. Vodacom is the title sponsor for the event. As South Africa's largest telecommunications company, it is an honor to have Vodacom at the conference. Mind the Speed is the awards sponsor for the coveted 2019 MyBroadband Awards, which will be announced later today. Thank you to our registration sponsor, DFA. Thank you to our speaker sponsors, Squidnet, QCon, Huawei, and Nokia. Thank you to our platinum sponsors, WiArc and Huawei. A big thanks to our gold sponsors, Africa Data Centers, Miro, Cypherwave, Home Connect, Nology, Scoop, YOA Cable, Nashua, CBI Electric, Codehesion, Wingu, V-Scaler, Supermicro, Cool Ideas, and Fixed Mobile Telecoms. Thank you to our silver sponsors, Gabston Technologies, Cloud Protect, Evenflow, WireUlink, .com SA, NetLogix, Peplink, AfriHost, Fortinet, Yealink, ATS Network Management, Solar Winds, Pink Elephant, Poly, TCM, and SA Digital Villages. Thank you to our bronze sponsors, Vox, Radwin, Axis, Logitech, Real World Systems, SensePost, Duxbury Networking, J-Core International, RSA Web, Wilcom, and Blanco. Thank you to our copper sponsors, CTU Training Solutions and NetShield. Our other conference partners are iTech, IC Logistics, and domains.co.za. Today's streaming will be handled by AntFarm. Our Wi-Fi sponsors are Console and Quick Connect. To kick things off, welcome the best MC in South Africa, Aki Anastasiou.
Hello, good morning everybody. How is everybody on this Thursday morning? Wow, you guys sound really excited this morning. How's this side of the room this morning? And how's this side of the room this morning? And how's this side of the room this morning? I'm afraid you guys win it this morning. Well done. Welcome. Give our sponsors a big round of applause. The big ones, of course, MTN, Liquid Telecom, and Vodacom for really making this happen today, because you know what? Without these big sponsors, it would not be possible. So it's interesting to see who's been to every single MyBroadband conference in the room. Let me have a look. What number conference is this? Just out of curiosity. What number is it, Yanni? The 14th one, okay. Of course, Yanni van Zyl, he knows this because he's been to all of them, right? You haven't missed one. So welcome, folks. As we normally do and traditionally do at every one of these MyBroadband conferences, we run a quick survey to find out who's using what, who's doing what on the internet. But it's amazing how the world has evolved to where we are today. So let me look in the room over here. Who is currently using... We're talking about phones, right? Put your phones in the air. Let me see your phones. Put on your screens. Add a bit of brightness on your screens. Let's have a look at your phones. Okay. Right, let's see. Who's using an Apple device? Okay. Who's using a Samsung device? Right. Who's using a Huawei device? Okay. And who's using any other kind of device? Okay. I'm saying there are other sponsors. What are you using, for example? This guy over here with a hat on, what are you using? A what? A Nokia. Okay, Nokia making fantastic devices nowadays. Who still uses a BlackBerry in the room? Let me have a look. Because they're also making pretty nice devices. Security is fantastic on the BlackBerry device. Okay, out of interest, mobile data alone, right? I'm just looking at my usage every single year on year. I mean, I was comparing a phone from last year to this year, and the amount of data I'm using every single month is astonishing. Who's using around about a gig of data a month on your phone? All right. Who's using more than 5 gigs a month on your phone? All right. Who's using more than 10 gigs a month on your phone? Wow. Who's using more than 20 gigs? You need to get out more, sir. How many gigs a month do you use on your phone? 25. Anybody using more than 25 gigs of data? My word. How much do you use a month? 40 gigs a month on your phone. What are you doing on your phone? Okay, it's connected. You're using it as a hub. He's using Apple products. You've had 3 updates in the last 6 weeks to do as well. Okay, we get it. I'm not going to trash you on that. Who's using Vodacom as their service provider? Let me have a look. Who's using Vodacom? All right. Who's using MTN? Guess where the MTN guys are sitting? Somewhere there. Telkom Mobile. All right. Cell C. Okay, you can admit you're using Cell C. There's nothing wrong with it, okay? They'll come right. Don't worry. It's going to be all right. Okay, there you go. And who's out of interest using, who didn't have fiber last year? Who's got fiber this year? Wow, that's quite a big number. And if you're a fiber user and you're loving fiber, let me say, woohoo! Yeah, see, fiber all the way. But it's amazing, when you look at 2019, where we are today, ladies and gentlemen, this year, the internet crossed a threshold. You know, the internet, which kind of kicked off in 1969, where there were only 4 nodes in the US, for example. Today, you look at the latest analytics, we've got 21 or so, 22 billion connected devices on the internet, and it's growing fast. You know, we know about IoT. But today, on average, there are 75,000 gigs of data that are sent over the internet every single second. That's like, conservatively speaking, that's how much data. And this is the first year, 2019, according to the International Telecommunications Union, that more than half of the world has got connected to the internet for the very first time. So, I mean, that's a big milestone. And of course, this year we mark the 30th birthday of the internet, and 25 years since the first e-commerce transaction took place. So certainly some really big milestones. But when you look at this year, and you look at how many people are connected, you look at our continent as a whole, you realize there are still so many gaps, because there are still about 50% of the world's population that aren't connected to the internet. And that's the one growth that we need to address, and we need to really address the price of data as well. When you look at the countries around the world, when they did this data comparison, a company called cable.co.uk, and of course, I don't think in this room there's one person who still doesn't feel as strongly about the pricing of data as I do. So who says data must fall? Let me see. Okay, you all want data to still fall, right? South Africa is 143 out of the 230 countries surveyed. That's where we are when it comes to pricing. And, you know, in India, for example, they're paying about R3.70 for a gig of data. South Africa average pricing for a gig of data is around 120, well, the global average is 121 Rand, but in South Africa it's about 102 Rand. The prices are dropping, but they're not dropping fast enough, right? But on a more positive note, you could be in Zim and you could be paying about $75 or about 1,000 Rand a gig of data, all right? So just be thankful you're not in Zim and you're not being exposed to that kind of data. But when you look at this conference and how it's evolved today, I mean, the company got a fantastic lineup of the who's who. And if you think of the big guys in the room, you know, the Vodacoms, the MTNs of the room, the responsibility that they have with our data. And when you look at IoT, when you look at big data, when you look at analytics, when you look at security, when you where this is developing towards, and you look at 5G and the speeds that are coming in the next 5 years, we are not going to recognize the world of telecommunications in the next 5 years compared to what it's going to look like today. So I'm really looking forward to really welcoming you all this morning, and thank you for making the effort to come to this MyBroadband conference. Of course, MyBroadband is the hashtag. If you want to tweet about it, tell us about your thoughts, and we will obviously cover and look at your questions that you have throughout the day and pose those questions to the various speakers that are going to be speaking at the conference today. So, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to welcome our first speaker at this year's MyBroadband event, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome on stage MTN South Africa's Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Godfrey Motsa.
Godfrey Motsa is the Chief Executive Officer of MTN South Africa, a position which he has held since March 2017. Prior to heading up MTN South Africa, Godfrey served as the Vice President of South and East Africa at MTN Group. During his career, Godfrey has held senior management positions at many companies, including Kellogg's and Coca-Cola. His passion, however, is mobile telecoms, which is why he joined Vodacom in 2005 as head of brand marketing. During his time at Vodacom, he held numerous executive positions, including Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Vodacom Lesotho and Vodacom DRC. He also served as the Chief Officer of the Consumer Business Unit and Chief Officer of Regional Operations at Vodacom Group. Godfrey holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree and an MBA from Thames Valley University. Please welcome Godfrey to the stage.
Hi guys. At MTN we say yellow. Sorry to the Vodacom guys. Okay, the story I'm basically just going to talk about today, it's really nothing cutting edge. I think it's like more or less like where things are as we see it from an MTN perspective. So without further ado, I'll just go through the slides. At MTN, we've got what we call the core belief. Basically, the core belief is everyone deserves the benefits of a modern connected life. So either you are in Lusiki or you are in the Sexton world, we need to make sure that we deliver world-class internet. Whether you are in Cape Town, it's the same philosophy we have. It actually helps us wake up in the morning knowing that we are truly changing lives. This year, we achieved a significant milestone. We basically crossed 95% 4G coverage in South Africa. This is in spite of us not having 4G spectrum. The second part is you don't just pray for these things to get to 95% coverage. You have to invest. So you have to believe that there is an opportunity. You have to believe that everyone in South Africa should be connected. In the last 5 years, we've invested more than 50 billion rands. This is a conscious choice from the owners of MTN, the shareholders. A choice that we need to basically put strong investment to build a sustainable MTN and to make sure that South Africa does not basically get left behind. On the far left of the, it's your far left, on the graph, you see what has basically been happening on the number of sites. We've basically more than tripled the number of 4G sites in the last 5 years. But equally important, we're still increasing the number of sites on 3G, and we're still increasing the number of sites on 2G. We are not discontinuing 2G. We are still basically building a 2G network. Because South Africa is a country, actually it's many countries in one. There are people who just remain voice, and there are people who basically also want to be on super data. When it comes to innovation, we know the biggest thing is actually 5G. We're the first network to successfully trial 5G indoor. We're the first network to successfully trial 5G, basically from an outdoor. We're also the first one to do it from a mobility perspective. Everything at MTN SA is ready for 5G. The only thing that we don't have is the spectrum. So that's why we are seriously encouraged when we see the tender from ICASA that says the 3.5 spectrum band is actually going to be part of the new high demand spectrum being issued. We also further encouraged to see the 2300 being added to that, because South Africa should not wait. The world is basically moving to 5G. We cannot keep on procrastinating around issuing 5G spectrum. Needless to mention that some of the competitors are already binging on 5G. We know the kind of guys who stand on the line and just clap for competitors to be sailing ahead from us. Talking about ICASA, we've had a lot of discussions with ICASA this year, from new high demand spectrum being issued, to fines on WhatsApp, to out of bundle regulation. So it's been a busy year. I think I've long said before that I'd rather have a strong, engaging regulator like ICASA is doing than basically not have somebody of that caliber. We are encouraged, as I said, by the work that's happening on the issuance of the new spectrum. Guys, we have waited for 14 years. We haven't got new spectrum as MTN for like 14 years. And you can see how our network has basically grown, and you understand the investment required on that, and you also know the impact it has on data prices. I will never stop talking about spectrum until this position changes. It's a slide that we have seen from our group, from our CTIO, Giovanni Chiarelli. It's a slide you have seen from my boss, Rob Shooter. I keep on making this simple story. MTN in Swaziland serves a population of like 1.1, 1.2 million. They've got more spectrum than MTN in South Africa. That serves a population of 58 million people with a customer base of 30 million. Does not really help us. That's why I say the work that's really being done around the issuance of the new spectrum or additional spectrum is really long overdue, and the urgency of this is now. Aki, you spoke about prices. Data must fall. We are not tone deaf. We are dropping prices. You don't really have to go and hide anywhere to find these, to seek anywhere to find these prices. At MTN, 149 rands, 20 gigs. 199, basically 40 gigs. 299, 80 gigs. These are super competitive prices. They're basically out there on the best network. I know you didn't invite me to sell here, but I just have to be very clear that we're really doing a lot. I think it's also worth noting that last year we did something really brave. Customers were paying around 150 rands a gig, or 149 rands a gig a month to basically consume social media, which is the most used basically in the internet, the most consumed in the internet. We're super bold because we've got this we're a challenger brand, so we've got a challenger mentality. We dropped to 10 rands. We congested our network, especially the 3G network. We had to basically reverse that. We did not push it back to 150. We basically pushed it to $30. Okay. The whole industry moved from, not the whole industry, the main players, they moved from like 150. I think now it's settling around the 30s a gig, roughly for a month. Again, it shows that with competition, you're able to drop prices. The fact that we ended up with a fine on that is another story. But the headline from our side is we transformed from 149 to resetting the prices on around 30 rands. And the people who basically use WhatsApp, even the YouTube moved to $50. Facebook moved to $50 from 150. So we really believe those kind of things are actually transformational. It's also important to be cautious of the fact that when we push on these price wars, there should be a bit of rationality, because the concept of pricing below cost is not sustainable. If we do not basically get spectrum on time, we congest the networks, and then we need to densify the networks, and that costs more money. What will end up happening if we keep on fighting price wars and charging below cost? We don't generate enough money for future investment. 5G is not cheap. Of course, I know it is far more efficient than 4G, but we just have to get that balance right. Sometimes I wake up and I look at these offers from the competitors. I say, how do they make money from these prices? But hey, they're smart business people. Around customers, there are two important things that we have done. Beside the regulation from ICASA, 2 years ago or so, or even 18 months ago or so, we had out of bundle to around 150 rands. Not 150 rands, 150 a megabyte, and then to almost $2. And today at MTN, it is at 29 cents. This is the lowest price at the moment amongst the major players. And I know Telkom is seen as a benchmark for pricing. It's actually at par with Telkom. Yes, we are able to match Telkom on out of bundle. The other part is this thing of basically managing out of bundle. There was a bit of confusion around the regulation. I think MyBroadband really came very hard on us. And we had to listen to our customers and also listen to you guys. That at MTN, the out of bundle is by default. No tricks, nothing. When you basically deplete your bundle, we block. Unless you ask that please don't block me. We're not getting a lot of people asking us to say, please don't block me. We have lost, I mustn't say the figure that we have lost, but we have lost a lot of money. But again, it's going to take a year to wash, and then back to where we would like to be. Because we have reduced prices, we have increased what people use per month. I should be clear, guys, that in South Africa, if you look at the amount that customers basically use, it's not really competitive or decently comparable to what you see in fast-growing emerging markets. In the 21st century, a country cannot grow if, when it comes to the information age, when it comes to the internet, they basically don't have faster speeds, they don't have lower prices, and they don't have deeper penetrations, and they don't have people addicted to the internet. because that's where innovation, you can't innovate just using 1 gig a month. It has to be more than that. You look at our prepaid customers today, on average using roughly 1 gig. You look at our postpaid customers, roughly a month using 3 gigs. We basically have to increase this. What we have done in the last year, compounded, we're up 32%. So yes, we're basically delivering more gigs to our users. And at the same time, we are reducing prices. You could see the steady decline basically here. And Aki, just to correct you, the average, or the weighted average price per MTN is not 102 rands. It's almost like less than half. It's like half of that. I don't know where the 102 comes from. We had a big debate with the regulator, the Competition Commission, because sometimes I saw they used the 2016 data to basically talk in 2019. And you see how much this thing is declining every year. This is a slide that we normally use when you talk to investors. When they ask, your market is saturated, we always say, I think you saw a bit earlier, that I used to work at Coca-Cola and Kellogg, really with world-class marketers. We used to say there is nothing like saturated markets. There's only saturated marketers. So from an MTN perspective, we say, where are the big buffaloes for growth? The first one is data. When you talk about proper data customers, we're not talking about these incidental users of 2 megs, people using the internet, not even being aware that they're using the internet. It's roughly 14, 15 million people at MTN, out of a base of like 30. So in South Africa, we still have like 40% of our customers not using the internet, And nobody should be left behind. So we need to basically deepen the penetration. And of course, that's revenue for us. That's growth for us. The second part is around the fintech space. You saw people like FNB, with FNB Connect, going to telecom. There's a lot of convergence between the fintech and the traditional telecoms. This quarter, we are going to launch mobile money. There's a lot of haters on this. It says you have failed twice before, why are you coming back? The point is, maybe we might have failed twice before, the opportunity still exists. 17 million people unbanked or underbanked. The problem is still there. And we still stubbornly believe that at MTN, we can do for these people the same thing we've done in basically revolutionizing and democratizing telephony and the internet. Today, we've got over 30 million customers on mobile money. We basically make, I think last year, told the market around 8 billion rands. And it is growing exponentially. I know there's a lot of guys who kick me around and tell me this, South Africa is not Africa. These 17 million people who are seeing, they're basically very similar to what we see in the rest of the continent. And this time around, we've got a platform, basically the Ericsson Converged Wallet, that we are using across 14 countries. It's world class. This time around, we have people who do not just talk about these things at interviews and do some nice slides. People who have basically built these businesses. They're in our system, and they're basically here, helping us build this thing. So we're really, really confident that this time around, you're going to get it right. The other place where we see opportunities is in the enterprise space. We are very under-indexed. The simple philosophy we have at MTN is that our market share that we have on the consumer side at least should correlate on the enterprise side. That's not the case at the moment. But we have basically put a very, very strong team, and we're pushing a lot of innovations, and we have basically communicated to the market, and we are on track that for the first time in a very, very, very long time, our enterprise business unit will turn positive towards the end of the year. Then the other part, digital services, mostly the content space, the e-commerce space. It's an area that's still basically under development, or actually underdeveloped, and we basically put strong teams, strong initiatives, strong partnering, a lot of platforms that we are basically laying on this, so we see some growth there. The last one is a clear one, wholesale. We have built the best network in the country. We have capacity to basically take third parties. We have got MNOs. We used to have Telkom. Today we have Cell C. Moving forward, we are not equivocating this time around. We open to business. We open for business, for MVNOs as well. Of course, it has to be commercially sensible, because having this platform, we are not promoting a race to the bottom. But as I say, we have MNOs on our network. We also basically open for MVNOs. As I say, it has to be commercially sensible. So these really, we have these curves, basically 6 curves. So these are the curves we see. So data, fintech, enterprise, digital services, as well as wholesale. And the wholesale stuff is not just only from an SA perspective, because we've got a lot of fiber. We've got the second biggest infrastructure on fiber after Telkom. When it comes to the wet cables as well, we're putting a lot of investments in that. So it's really, really great opportunity for us. Then I only had to put the logo here because there are so many stories. But here is a bottom line. We are committed to work with Cell C. Whatever we do with Cell C, first and foremost, should be in the best interest of MTN shareholders. Maybe just to add some color what's really happening. We've got phase 1, which is basically the rural roaming. We're discussing with them to extend that to urban areas as well. Traditionally, it's a hybrid. It's an MNO. Cell C have spoken about wanting to be a giant MVNO. So we basically host them basically everywhere. They have got an infrastructure that we need to consolidate with ours. You don't do this thing in 2 weeks. It takes a lot of time. We're busy with that exercise. But bottom line, there are thousands of jobs at Cell C. There are tens of thousands of people that are directly or indirectly employed there, and families. Also as corporate citizens, we basically believe that we should do our part. But it is not our responsibility. We just have to do what will help MTN and basically hopefully help Cell C. Maybe my closing slide, because I can see Aki walking towards me. The concept of sharing infrastructure. When we have spent 50 billion rands, you can't use that as a barrier for other people. You should use that as a bridge for other people. Because it helps you, it helps the guys being hosted to reduce CAPEX as well as OPEX. When that is basically done, you are able to expand the coverage. For instance, when we do the deal with Cell C stands to benefit 95% 4G coverage, just like that. Of course, there's a transition period. The other part is around low barriers to entry. I know the regulators, they get excited that they should be the one basically deregulating the market. By us opening our infrastructure is the best way to stimulate competition. By us allowing other MNOs to roam on the best network in the country, MVNOs to be on our basic platform, we're able to stimulate competition, reduce prices. And for those guys who care about the planet as well, I care about the planet as well. It also helps with the duplication, with the carbon emissions, and all the stuff that we always have to watch out for. But when all is done, we're able to increase connectivity, we're able to reduce costs, we're able to stimulate the economy. This is one of the most critical sectors if we're saying South Africa has to return to growth that we can actually push. And from an MTN side, maybe our commitment is we'll continue to basically invest, we'll continue to be focused. This is our birthplace. There could be more customers in Iran or in Nigeria, but this is our birthplace. And then we're basically going to deliver the best for South Africa. Thank you.
Godfrey. Now, the most important question that I have for you is, just step over here, where do you get these sneakers from, man?
My wife bought them for me.
Armani,
I don't know what she bought them.
Armani Exchange, excuse me, eh?
It's on brand.
They're fantastic. I love them,
Oh,
Godfrey.
thank you.
Listen, and firstly, you know what? It's important, it's fair to criticize organizations when they've been doing badly, and I was a former customer of MTN, and I trial different networks all the time.
Did you come back?
I'm considering it because, you know what, when you and I had the discussion quite a few years ago, you spoke about your turnaround strategy, and my point was congratulations to you and your team, because you have really had an impact, and I think your customers over here will, and you here, look at the research that's been done, the surveys, MTN is doing great stuff, so congratulations to your team.
Thank you,
congratulate, be fair.
Thank you.
But, yeah, there you go. Give them a round of applause. Of course, I was also one of those idiots that bought MTN shares at 220 Rand. You know. But, you know, they're going to come back. I'm convinced about this. I mean, telecommunications are having a tough time. I mean, even you look at the Vodacom shares, for example. But I am appalled and disappointed in the government of this country. When you raise the question of spectrum, you and I had this discussion 3 years ago. Telecommunications at the time gets up, we're going to solve this problem. We hear the same nonsense every single year, but nothing gets done. The president last year said, this is a priority by the, I remember the president's exact words. He said by around November we will have clarity on spectrum. We still don't have clarity on spectrum. So what the hell is going on with the spectrum? Are you optimistic, or do you think something's actually going to happen?
I think we are being too harsh on the president.
Tell me why.
Yeah. For the first time, ICASA has put the C-band,
right,
the 5G,
okay,
on the tender.
Okay.
For the first time, the 2300 is basically there.
Right.
Of course, the 700 and the 800, they still have to execute on the digital migration.
Okay.
I actually believe that we're moving the right direction. Better late than never.
So why do you compare us to Swaziland?
Because that's where we still are.
Okay.
We can't punch the sky as yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're really tracking the right direction.
So next year when Godfrey comes onto the stage, as CEO of MTN South Africa, you will have good news for us on spectrum.
You see, I am not Minister Stella, and I'm not a CEO Wellington.
If you were the minister, if you were Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, the Minister of Telecommunications, what would you do if you went back to Pretoria today? What would you do to make the process speed up faster?
I will continue doing what I'm doing, just ask people to run faster.
Okay.
Yeah, because what she's doing is right. We just need more space, more pace, agility, speed. And the other thing, in this country, because the fixed side wasn't done well, I'm not going to say it was poorly done, wasn't done well. There's a lot of pressure on the mobile side to kind of like cover the space that is traditionally supposed to be done by fiber, as well as by fixed.
Yeah.
If you look at our fixed penetration, it's very low. But when people basically go to their homes, they basically have to be streaming, they have to be on videos, they have to be doing homeworks, heavy data. That space is being covered by the MBBs, the fixed LTEs. These things are spectrum hungry. These things are spectrum hungry. If we get spectrum, we would be able to cover that gap.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm actually glad you raised Cell C at the end of your presentation.
It has to be the end.
It has to be the end. Well, not really the end, but at the end of your presentation. But there are a few grey hairs on your head here, Godfrey.
A lot here
How much of those grey hairs has Cell C contributed to? And do they keep you awake at night? Because they owe you a lot of money. And I felt that you candy-coated your relationship with Cell C. On a serious note, they're an important part of the landscape, right? And it's sad to see an organization like Cell C find itself where it is today. They simply cannot fail in our environment, right? They owe you guys a lot of money. Are you optimistic about it? You mentioned all the other stuff. I bought it and I didn't buy it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't speak for Cell C, I speak for MTN.
How much do they owe you?
We have our results at the end of the month. Yeah. But
more than,
but,
okay,
but,
stop
no,
me.
no.
This is 100 million, 200 million, 300, stop
No,
me.
no, to be honest with you,
Okay.
you remember what you communicated
Yeah.
at H1.
Yeah.
We have basically a payment plan with them. It's basically it's going okay. It's going okay.
I see it's like that brother who has a criminal record in the family.
No, don't
like-
say that to my competitor.
You know, and you have to,
No.
you can't say they're not my brother, but they are my brother. You know what I'm saying?
No, guys, can I maybe just kind of like rise above this? Guys, we just have to understand this thing. One, if, as I say, it's not really MTN's responsibility to kind of like save Cell C.
No, fair enough.
Yeah, but surely we can do something on our side.
Yes.
And that has to be within the, within the right economics.
Yeah.
Of course, they've got their capitalization stuff to deal with.
Yeah.
But for me, the Cell C stuff, I'm looking at two ways. One, as a partner and a customer. It's a significant customer. And then the second part, as a citizen. We cannot basically have competitors being reduced.
Yeah.
And then you excite the regulators. There are thousands of jobs there. I think I did mention that. A lot of suppliers there. I don't know, also tax collections there.
Sure.
So the impact in the country will be huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if it can actually be saved and everybody can do what they're supposed to do, I really think it's good for Cell C, it's good for the sector, it's good for the country.
Spot on.
Yeah, we
spot on.
cannot be returning the economy to growth and then folding other players. But as I say, it is not our responsibility. We just do our part.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, let's do a selfie quickly, Godfrey.
Cool.
You stand right over here. Everybody lift up your phones if you don't mind quickly. All right, here we go. Fire, there we go. Smile. There we go, Godfrey. Thank you very much.
You've got an iPhone.
What phone are you using out of interest?
I still use a Huawei.
Okay, which one are you using?
I don't know what
Tell you.
Donald Trump is going to do to me.
All right, let me see. Now listen, these are fantastic devices. This is the P30, the latest top of the range one. Fantastic camera.
Yeah.
What do you use your phone the most to do? Apart from email, I mean, what's your favorite application on your phone? Out of interest, as a CEO of a top company, what are you using?
Actually, I do a lot of stuff on the internet.
Yeah.
Of course, the clean stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything, Godfrey.
But I also find a lot of peace.
Yeah.
Because I'm big on music.
Yes.
So I've got like YouTube music. You know, now they've got this air.
Yeah.
I've got Spotify.
Yeah.
I've got the Music Time from MTN.
Okay.
I've got Deezer from my ex.
Wow.
So it's basically yeah. So I use it a lot for music. I like watching videos. I like reading.
And how much data are you using a month? Can you believe this guy here uses 25 gigs of data a month? 40 gigs.
On clean stuff.
I hope you're on MTN. Are you on MTN? Oh, he's on Vodacom. Okay.
No.
Not everyone's perfect, right?
It's fine. You can't have everyone.
Anyway, how much data do you use a month?
I use so many different devices, so I think I'll use between 20 and 30.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Godfrey, MTN CEO South Africa, always a sport, a real gentleman in the industry. Keep up the amazing work.
Thanks, man.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. There's a small gift from the team at MyBroadband. Thank you very much, Godfrey. And ladies and gentlemen, please keep that social media coming along. It's hashtag MyBroadband Conference. And I want to ask you right now, if you were like the god of telecommunications in South Africa, open up your phones, hashtag MyBroadband Conference. What would you change? It could be spectrum, it could be reducing data, it could be reducing or subsidizing the price of handsets. We'd love to hear your suggestions. Use the hashtag MyBroadband Conference. Okay, time for our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the CEO of Liquid Telecom. Please welcome Mr. Rashad Shah.
Rashad Shah is the CEO of Liquid Telecom South Africa a Pan-African connectivity and digital service provider that offers services to telecoms operators, governments and businesses across the African continent. Before joining Liquid Telecom, Rashad was the founder and CEO of SquidNet, where he led the team that was entrusted with building an IoT connectivity business in South Africa in partnership with the world's largest IoT operator, Sigfox. Concurrently, Rashad served as the Chief Strategy Officer at DFA for 2013 to 2018, where he led the company's strategy by transforming the business from an infrastructure company to a telecommunications services provider. Rashad has held various director-level positions in the telecommunications industry at Logica CMG, Protec, Lifetree and Cisco. This offered him the opportunity to work closely with many leading telecommunications operators in the USA, South Africa, across the Middle East and Africa, Russia, Turkey and Southeast Asia. Rashad holds a National Diploma in Information Technology from the Durban University of Technology and Technikon South Africa, an Executive MBA from the University of Cape Town's Graduate School of Business, and is a graduate from the Harvard Business School on Advanced Management. Please welcome Rashad to the stage.
So I'm going to change the pace up a little bit in terms of what I was going to talk to you about today, which really is about enabling active agents of change. So I'm going to skip right ahead towards what I was going to get close to concluding with in terms of a message and bring it up front. And that message is that we have an opportunity to create approximately 1.2 million jobs by 2030 in South Africa. Now that's a huge number. Do you agree? Yeah? Let's hear a round of applause for those that are committed to doing that. How do we do that? It's primarily through digitization, automation, and the new level of skills that each and every one of you in this room will be contributing towards in getting to that position. But I want to take you back to where we are today. We are in a fragile state. Our economy is in a fragile state. We have unemployment at an all-time high of about 29%. Which makes it really, really, really difficult for us to get growth in any significant way in this economy. A recent report that NEDLAC did was around plotting future scenarios, and they took a timeline of 2030 and tried to plot what skill level will look like, what activities we need to undertake in order to reach these future scenarios. And they came up with 4 future scenarios. And I'm going to talk through some of them. And like any research process that you go through, of course, those scenarios are ever changing. They are ever evolving and are highly dependent on what we do in that path to getting to those future scenarios. So you'll see in this little chart, there are 2 axes. The one that goes across from entitlement to empowerment really focuses on an attitude of what that workforce is really about. The second axis focuses on the skill level, where you have appropriate skills and inappropriate skills. Inappropriate skills, in this case, is referring to skills that are not directly suited to the specific job that is going to be created, or even the job that the person is currently fulfilling. So let me start with the first scenario. The first scenario, 2030 scenario, is one called a dead end. Now, as the name suggests, it is exactly that, a dead end. So a scenario that we need to largely avoid. And how do we do that? So where is it plotted? Firstly, it's plotted right there, right? So bottom left-hand corner, which means that you have people in the job market with a sense of entitlement for a specific role, but largely inappropriate skills in order to fulfill those specific tasks. So that's a hard message, I know, especially when you speak about entitlement in our environment. When we talk about entitlement, it usually refers to a largely negative scenario where part of history dictates that we do need to acknowledge that there's still going to be this level of entitlement in a scenario such as this. So this is the one where we need to avoid. The second scenario, which is around demand and control. So in this scenario specifically, what you got is you've got some level of appropriate skills. Absolutely. So you've got skills that are highly regarded, skills that are future ready, skills that are most likely could have a level of utilization towards those future roles that we spoke about, that 1.2 million jobs. But there's an attitude challenge here, and that's going to prevent a high level of adoption in this future scenario. So let's move to another one, missing the mark. So this one talks about missing the mark, and in brackets, for now. And why do we say for now? It's for now because there's an opportunity for this specific group to actually move up to the more appropriate skills. And it's actually, this is the target audience that you need to identify within your businesses, within the companies that you work with, within your partner ecosystem, within your supply chain ecosystem, around how do we move the skill level of this specific group with the right attitude, the empowered individuals, in order to change that skill level up. But ultimately, there is only one scenario that we want to actually drive towards, and that scenario is what we call accomplished game changers. So it does sound aspirational, absolutely, but it is really a true sense of accomplishment that can be achieved when you merge the appropriate skills and the right level of empowerment within an individual with the right attitude in order to be ready for that skills that will be created in those future roles. The report was an interesting one in that it focused heavily on what are those signposts that you need to watch out for. I would say it's not about the signposts to watch out for, it's about the signposts that we should be creating, identifying those posts that we need to pass in order to make this scenario a reality, in order to realize the goals of this specific scenario that we want. So that's something for us to think about. When you empower people with skills, and when we talk about women and men with the right skills and as active agents of change, this is actually what Edwin Markham meant when he said, choices are hinges of destiny. If you're wondering who Edward Markham is, or was, actually, he was a poet in the 1800s, and very famous for a poem that he wrote called The Man with the Hoe. Now, when you want to Google that, just get the spelling right. Okay, so you want to be able to find the right one. It's actually a poem around an oppressed workforce, and it's highly appropriate when we talk about digitization, when we talk about the skill level that we want in our workforce today, when we talk about the skill levels that we actually want to drive our organizations towards in a significant way. So I think it's quite considerate to think about how we empower people with skills. Moving on a little bit, when we reflect on these new technologies that are upon us, when we look at the stack of blockchain, when we look at what AI is doing in our businesses, when we look at what IoT is doing in our businesses, it does prompt three significant questions that we need to consider. The first would be our readiness to embrace the technology. Are we ready? Are we adopting? Are we enabling? Are we creating the right space for it? Are we creating the right budgets in order to go after these specific adoption levels of technology and how we're embracing them across our businesses? We're doing that in an interesting way at Liquid Telecom. One of the interesting mechanisms in which we engage our customers would be to try and engage them, and we of course have a wide range of business customers, and when you have business customers, they have a certain expectation in terms of how you answer the phone, who they get to speak to, and very often they want to speak to the most senior people. recently we started trialing a bot that we're getting to interact with some of our customers. It's working pretty well, mostly because the customer doesn't know it's a bot, so that's the one great thing. But importantly, the response rate, and once it's fully commercially launched to our entire customer base, the response rate, the level of accuracy in which we'll be engaging our customers will be far, far more visible and increase that experience that they're having with us. The second question to consider is, do we have skills to adapt to change? Now, this is different from actual skills that we talk about, digitization skills. This is the skill to allow change to happen to us, our level of adaptation. Now, it's very often you hear people talk about human beings are highly resilient, they can adapt to change, they are ready to embrace. But it's only if you have the learning mindset that you're able to adapt to change far easier. The third question that we need to ask and reflect upon is, are we investing in the skills that we need in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and 20 years from now? What are we doing in that investment? How are we going about it? What is the program that you have as a company that speaks directly to this level of skills investment? These are, I would say, 3 top questions that's not specifically centered around your HR department, your learning and training department. This is the C-suite questions that need to be asked, that need to be answered as well, and need to be considered in terms of exactly how you're going to grow your business. How are you going to get ready for that change that you're already experiencing? There are a couple of facts we must consider in terms of this technology wave that's upon us. And of course, machine learning and artificial intelligence and advanced robotics are progressing at an unstoppable rate. So there's nothing we could do to stop that, not any of you in your businesses. You could hide under a rock a little bit, but it's still not going to stop. It will happen around you. Another fact to consider is this will impact millions of jobs in South Africa alone. It will have that impact. That's a foregone conclusion. But remember the message I gave you right at the beginning, that there's an opportunity to create up to 1.2 million jobs through digitization and automation. And the third point to consider, is although it's going to be disruptive, it does represent an enormous opportunity for us to reignite productivity, and we do need it. If you consider the performance of our country, we absolutely need this reignition of our economy. And we put down this little picture here, and we debated the color to soften the message a little bit. But it doesn't matter whether we use pink or blue or green or red or white, the message is still a stark one. South Africa's GDP growth is lackluster, right? If I break this chart up into 2 decades, the piece to the left and the piece to the right, in the last 10 years, GDP has declined by 43% as compared to the previous decade. That's a significant decline, which means that the economy is not growing. This year, economists are predicting that by the end of 2019, we would have approximately a 1% GDP growth. So that's a really stark message. It's a stark message because many of you some of you are in budgeting cycles, many of you are forecasting in Excel these great projections for your business. But that economic outlook is a reality. It also means that there is a call to action here. What are you doing? What is your business doing? How are you enabling the skills that do need to be injected into this economy in order to get these levels up? And it's not going to happen overnight. If you go back to that picture of those 4 scenarios, that's a 2030 scenario, but it mustn't be a scenario that happens to us, where one of those 4 happen to us. It's really up to us to chart that path forward and execute on that path. A recent report also by McKinsey called The Future of Work in South Africa, they did a decent piece of research around how digitization and automation is actually going to impact not just South Africa, but the world in general. And in that, they found that approximately 375 million jobs globally are going to be impacted by digitization and automation, and specifically those roles need an upgrade in skills, and in some cases, a complete overhaul of the skills that are being fulfilled by those specific jobs. So that's 375 million. That's about 14% of the global working population. So that's a significant number. But it's not all bad news, actually, because when they looked at just one area, which is consumer goods spending globally, they found that between 250 and 280 million new jobs will be created. So that tells you that there is growth planned. So that's a really, really, really positive message in that those specific new roles created, besides the 375 that must go through this evolution, the 250 to 280 million jobs that are going to be created, of which we're seeing 1.2 million in South Africa by 2030, speak to the new level of capability and skill that must come into those specific roles in order to make it a reality. So if we don't do anything about it, we will get, the first scenario, which is the dead end. We don't have a choice. That's what will happen to us. But it's really about what do we do in order to enable this future that we actually want. A couple of months ago, Liquid Telecom launched what we call the 21C Skills Platform. So I'm just giving you a quick snapshot of it, and you can look up the website. It's pretty easy to find. It's 21C Skills, and you'll find it. And this program and platform specifically is available for free to anybody who can connect to it over the internet. And it is positioned for the advancement of the skill level of the African continent. It has courses and programs in there from everything from basic data science to advanced machine learning to artificial intelligence to Internet of Things to a cloud capability to cloud technical skills. So it's a 21C skills program that's enabling you to train up for the 21st century. To train up for the 21st century through a set of programs and skill sets that are needed. Why did we do it? We did it because, as a participant on the African continent, we feel responsible for that as well. We feel responsible for helping drive that skill level up. And we're doing that because we know that we will, of course, be beneficiaries, like every other business in this room today, will be beneficiaries of that specific advanced skill level of individuals that are actually transforming the continent. So go check it out. It gives you a good view of what are the types of programs out there and why you should be enabling your workforce to consider these programs as well. Now, with our footprint on the African continent, this platform, we firstly get to take it across this footprint. That's the first thing we're able to do. But actually, anybody on the continent, anybody in the world can access this. But this footprint specifically enables us to actually deliver on this vision of having a connected continent. And what we're doing and the role that we're playing in the continent, and specifically in South Africa, really centers around how we're enabling these skills. Today we have in the audience 9 postgrad students that we invited along from a partnership that we're doing with the University of Johannesburg. And these students that we partnered with for their research that they're busy with, some of them are master's students and some of them are PhD students. It ranges everything from neural networks and how you could use that big data neural networks to predict churn and then do something about it, through to slightly more advanced capabilities like using artificial intelligence and determining optimal energy usage in data centers, which of course is an important one because of course energy is not an unlimited resource. So finding the most economic methods to be able to do that is very, very useful. Before I show you a little video that our sales leadership coerced me into putting into the deck, I want to talk a bit about what you should be doing. So what we're doing is trying to enable the skills level. What you should be doing is something that allows you to have a positive contribution, not only within your own businesses, but specifically across industry. How do you partner with your educational institutions? How do we partner with other learning facilities to actually inject this new level of skill that we actually need in South Africa specifically? And it is your responsibility, like it is our responsibility, to reignite growth in this economy. So let me share this little clip that our sales leadership said I have to, because they're paying for this as well. There you go.
I am the heartbeat of a continent. 10 times as fast, rebuilt to last. I am a highly respected, network-connected, technology-injected solutions provider. Broader and wider, with reliability and speed, I deliver what you need. Because I'm liquid. I unlock, I enable, I bring resilience to the table. Configured for the demands of the 4th Industrial Revolution, I am your connectivity solution. Because I'm liquid. I am the digital gateway to a continent, helping enterprise and governments transform. I am the new norm. Accelerating innovation, enriching education, empowering a generation. Because I'm liquid. I am the largest independent fiber infrastructure on the continent. I will help you grow, enhance your digital flow, because I'm flexible, extendable, and much more dependable. I am state of the art. My beating heart will kickstart Africa's digital transformation. Because I'm liquid. Because I am Liquid Telecom.
Thank you.
Put your hands together, Rashad Shah, ladies and gentlemen. Gee, that GDP growth chart scared the living daylights out of me, eh?
It should.
Who was the president at the time? No, wait. No, wait. But you're optimistic, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that you like hit on a raw nerve, because everywhere we go, it's all about skills, right? Is it too late? Have we missed the curve, is my point. When you look at
we haven't.
the world I mean, this is something that China did many years ago, and countries are still doing it today, but you are quite, and imagine if everybody injected the same passion and enthusiasm in upskilling people, especially in the ICT sector. It would, I mean, the benefits to the GDP would be enormous, right, as you've highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not only the ICT space where this skill level needs to shift, it's across industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the message we want to give, because I know there are IT managers and CIOs from manufacturing, from consumer goods, from retail that are here today. So it's actually not just about ICT skills, it's actually across the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you told us about skills and that sort of thing. You haven't really touched on Liquid Telecoms, which is I want to ask you about you guys, because you guys are an amazing success story and doing incredible stuff. And the vision is to connect the whole continent, right? How's it going on that side? Are the expansion plans going? What are the challenges that you face as Liquid Telecoms?
Yeah, I think it's going superbly well. I think in our business in South Africa specifically, we've executed the turnaround that was so needed for the last probably decade or so from that specific business. and
You can
it's
say
doing
the
really
name.
well.
You can say Neotel. You can say the name if you like.
Yeah, so it's doing superbly well. We're managing to partner with our customers on
Yeah.
their digitization journeys,
Right.
which is really, really useful, enabled with our cloud capability, enabled with our data center partner as well, Africa Data Centers, who's here today. So we're working really closely with our cloud business, our data center business, our connectivity business, to bring that together, partner with our customers, and enable their digitization journeys. And we found that recipe to be working really well.
I mean, South Africa's got really an established infrastructure, right? But going up into Africa, what kind of challenges are you facing in getting fiber into different countries and getting that dream, making that dream a reality that you talk about? What's the biggest challenge you face on the continent?
So I think, you have a lot less developed infrastructure in many of the towns. I mean, our focus is to, and if you see the network itself, it goes through about 660 towns and cities across the continent.
Yes.
And the reason we focus on those towns and cities is because that is the most developed area.
Right.
Africa is largely rural,
Yeah.
and that's not where our focus is. Our focus is on connecting the population.
Right.
And there are a bunch of challenges that come with that.
Yes.
Specifically around educating people around what it is all about. What is it going to enable? Talking about the internet, teaching what the internet is, that's actually the bigger challenge.
And I think getting those people connected, because although half of the world is connected to the internet, I mean, most people in Africa still don't have access to the internet.
That's right.
And that's very sad in 2019, right?
Yeah.
The impact that the data centers that are coming online, I'm talking about Microsoft's data centers, you're hearing about Amazon, et cetera, possibly Google, we know about Alibaba as well. It must be adding an incredible amount of impetus into your business as well, right? Are you seeing a big difference?
Yeah, absolutely, it is. It's a huge difference, and I think it's not just a South Africa-specific matter, because with these hyperscale data centers, as they switch on, whether it is in Johannesburg or Cape Town or Nairobi, it's truly enabling the cloud to be accessible. So we're playing catch-up on the African continent.
Yeah.
Many of our businesses across the continent haven't really adopted the cloud capability for a couple of reasons. One is because the data centers were far away and you needed data residency in those specific countries. So that's the first hurdle that's removed by hyperscalers coming into the continent. The second is the speeds and feeds to those data centers, and which is what we enable actually for our customer base.
Awesome. Rashad Shah, thank you so much. It's
Thank
a small
you.
gift from the team at MyBroadband. Thank you for joining us. One of the veterans in the business, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rashad Shah. Thank you, Rashad. Right, let's move on, ladies and gentlemen, and I know that Godfrey touched on 5G very briefly earlier, and I know that, all the big networks, I mean, Vodacom have, done extensive stuff with 5G and launching a commercial network as well, but boy, oh boy, when you look at 5G and you look at the true potential of 5G, if there's one technology that excites me for the next 5 years and the impact that it has the potential to make in everybody's lives, is 5G. So I know that I don't want to steal too much thunder from our next speaker, Dr. Brian Armstrong. He's going to be touching on that. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the chair of the Digital Business Department at Wits Business School. Please welcome Dr. Brian Armstrong.
Professor Brian Armstrong is the chair of digital business at Wits Business School and the former chief operating officer at Telkom. Brian is one of the foremost ICT industry leaders in South Africa, with over 30 years of top-level management experience in telecommunications, information technology, research and development, and systems engineering. He is widely regarded as a thought leader in digitalization, convergence, and business strategy. Brian was a key part of the leadership team which has been credited with turning Telkom around. In his time with Telkom, he revived the ailing Telkom business unit and conceived and led the acquisition of BCX and its integration into the group. He was also responsible for the group's retail unit and led Telkom strategy and transformation activities. In July 2017, Brian joined the Wits Business School in the role of professor in the chair of digital business. Here, his focus is on building a comprehensive knowledge base of the diverse dimensions of digital business and developing more scientifically rigorous models for core concepts in digitalization, with academically sound underpinnings. Brian holds BSc and MSc degrees in engineering from the University of the Witwatersrand and a PhD from University College London. Please welcome Brian to the stage.
Good morning, folks. It's great to be back. I had 15 minutes after that introduction. I think I have about 12. So what I want to talk to you about is, I think, one of the two big questions confronting operators and indeed the market in South Africa, which is fiber and 5G. And the question is, if we build it, will they come? Now, what I want to do is, last time I was here, which was in 2016, I started off by quoting Bob Dylan. And people said, hey, Brian, can't you get a little bit more up to date than that? So, hey, I moved forward about 10 years. I'm going to quote Cher. In her song, I believe it says, do you believe in life after 3G? Do you believe in life after copper? And do we have the resources? Are we strong enough financially? And are we able to make the investment? But I'm a more positive sort of guy, so I thought I'd get even a little bit further advanced in terms of my musical journey. So R. Kelly says, I believe I can fly. And I believe with 5G and with fiber, we will be able to touch the sky and deliver the future that we need. But what makes me say that? It's one thing to be able to stand up here and just sort of say that without evidence. So what I'm going to do is present evidence about that. Now, when I spoke at the MyBroadband Fiber Conference, and I was speaking to Rudolph about, so what should I talk about? He says, he doesn't want any of this inspirational stuff. He wants me to come with facts and figures and hard data. So, I'm going to come with facts and figures and hard data. Be ready? I'm going to go fast, like 5G. So, let's get into it. I'm going to firstly start talking about fiber. And what we've seen amazingly is this has been the adoption of fiber in South Africa over the last few years. But exponential trends like this are very difficult to predict forwards if we don't put them on a log plot. So what we see is, if we think about the fiber opportunity in South Africa and we plot it on a straight line log, which is where the trend seems to be, the problem is we end up at an impossible point because there's only 18.5 million homes in South Africa. But the reality is, at some point this curve will flatten. So we said, so how much time do we actually have? How much day, what can we predict in terms of the market out there to see how big is the fiber opportunity actually in South Africa? So what we did is we looked at it in terms of, on the vertical axis there, you see the monthly household income. On the horizontal axis, it's about the density of the residential area, ranging from low density to very high density. And you'll see in 2019, there's 16.8 million homes in the country. And traditionally, what fiber does is it focuses on the high density and the very high density areas in the medium to upper income groups. And if we look at that, we see there's a total of 4.3 million homes in that group. And if we carry on and then we overlay that with the percentage that is likely to be covered, it is possible that by around 2023, about 3 million homes will be coverable by fiber. Now, there is also talk about fixed wireless. There's a lot of talk, and I use the two somewhat interchangeably. And because fixed wireless can go further down into medium and lower density areas and provide greater coverage at lower income levels, you can probably get about 8.5 million homes covered by fixed wireless. And then, of course, there is the so-called emerging view of the mass market opportunity, which doesn't only focus on those highlighted areas, the more affluent homes. It focuses on high density in less affluent homes, which could bring another 7.6 million homes. You can't, of course, cover all of those. But if we overlay that with likely deployment percentages, we could get another approximately 1 million homes passed. So, where does this leave us? It says the potential addressable market in South Africa around the middle of the next decade would be about 3 million homes, as what I described, the baseline fiber opportunity, a further 700,000 or so in the additional mass market, and then the additional baseline fixed wireless opportunity is 5 million, which makes about 8.6 million homes. Now, whether this is particularly accurate or not, if we translate this into the financial case for it, what we see is a graph that looks somewhat like this, which is a whole lot more attractive than the GDP graph that Rashid showed in the last presentation. But what this says is, broadly speaking, if you take an ARPU of 500 Rand a month, the fiber market represents an opportunity of about 30 billion rand a year. Now, that is a very considerable market opportunity. And it's not a slam dunk. To pass 3 million homes is going to take a lot of belief, it's going to take a lot of investment and a lot of effort. But it is theoretically possible if the industry gets behind it. So that's the fiber side. I want to spend and I know I went through it really quickly. If you haven't been able to follow, you should have been at the Fiber MyBroadband conference. Okay, let's move on to 5G. And let's talk about 5G. Now, I think what would be instructive, it's always important to look forward. But sometimes we need to look backwards and see what we can learn from the past when we think about the future. So what are some of the lessons that we can learn from 3G? Well, firstly, that's how 3G traffic has actually evolved, which is amazing because if you look sort of about halfway across, before there's any data, in 2007, there was nothing. And what's interesting is that the actual 3G deployments, the early 3G deployments, started in around 2002, built momentum in 2003, 2004. And by 2005, there was relatively widespread deployment. But something happened in 2007. And that was the iPhone 1 was launched. In June 2007, it was launched in the States and obviously then washed over the world, so to speak. So the important thing about this is it was really only 5 years after the launch of 3G that we actually found the use case for it. People built the networks were there, and we didn't know what to do with them. And then the iPhone came along, and we realized what the use case actually was. Now, this led to, let's look at the deployment versus adoption. So there you see this exponential use of data, but what's interesting is that's actually how population coverage, global population coverage evolved. So we see that around 2007, there was only about 20% population coverage of 3G. But now we're sort of getting to saturation point at 82, 83, 84%. But the important point about this slide is that the actual usage lags the availability by about 5 years. So that's just the way it is, guys. Let's not bemoan the fact. We'll have to build the stuff, and we'll have to wait 5 years, and then we'll actually really see the adoption and the uptake. Does that put stress on the business case? Perhaps, but let's get over it, because we need the 5G. Let's look at another lesson from 3G. Now, this is where I said I'm going to show you a lot of data. Let me show you data. Exponential trends on a linear scale don't really teach us much at all. So let's translate that onto a log scale. That's the same data, but now with the vertical axis being a log scale. So we see actually in logarithmic terms, the growth is slowing slightly. And in the next few graphs, they're going to be complex graphs, so let me show you how to read the following charts. The number at the top is the year in which the forecast was made. Those are the data sources. The actual traffic is shown in the bold black line. The original ITU forecast is that blue one at the bottom. The forecast from now onwards are those dotted lines at the end. And then throughout the time, we've been making forecasts. And what I wanted to do here was unpack how accurately have we predicted this? Did we actually get it right? If we talk about forecasts of the future now, can we believe them? And does our historical record of forecasting traffic give us any confidence that we can forecast going forward? So what I show is a whole lot of forecasts, is the date of the forecast, the first data point, and how the forecast went. So let's look at this running back to around 25. So around 2005, data use started actually picking up. And that then I'm using the Cisco VNI data as the data that I'm showing, which most people use and is quite widely quoted. So at that point, we start seeing forecasts of the future. Now the question is, how accurate were those? So let's keep just rolling forward through this. As we see the actual and the forecasts extending further and further into the future, what we see is that the forecasts are actually remarkably accurate. If you plot this on a linear axis, yeah, there's a 20% error or a 30% error. But in the big scheme of things, when you look at it, when you're talking about 5 orders of magnitude growth, the forecasts were actually remarkably accurate. And going forwards, that would be the Cisco VNI forecast. This pink line is it's not I wouldn't call it a forecast, it's just a simple extrapolation of the current trend. And what's the lesson from this is that once we were actually in it, with some base data to look at, the forecasting was actually quite accurate. And if we look at that forecast going forwards, by the way, it just gives rise to the whole issue of the spectrum debate, because we won't be able to deliver another 1.5 or 2 orders of magnitude of data without densification and or more spectrum and or 5G. Okay, so that's lesson 3, but now this is the really important lesson from 3G. Look at the blue line there, the lower blue line is the original forecast done by the ITU with input from the UMTS, etc. in 2003. And they completely missed it. They were talking about the same things like video downloads and video sharing and mobile commerce and so on. They were talking about what we actually do with it, but they just completely missed the manifestation and the scale that 3G would actually bring to the world. So the lesson from this, and by the way, and you see that gap becomes 2 orders of magnitude, 100 times difference. So before the game started, we completely underestimated the opportunity. And I would suggest we're at risk of being in the same position today with regard to 5G. Because we talk about the use cases, but I don't think we've fully grasped the scale of the opportunity before us. So let me talk now a little bit about 5G specifically, and I'm going to go through this quickly. So when we think about 5G versus 3G, everybody wants something to, when you say something's disruptive, the term is it's 10 times better. 10x change leads to disruption, right? Well, 5G is at least 10x faster than 3G. It's got 10 times better latency. It can deliver 10 times more capacity, at least. It can handle more than 10 times the number of devices from the same base station. And all of these things, you put that together, if it was just one of these, it could potentially be a disruptive technology. Put them all together, there's no doubt in my mind that it will be it has the potential to be a disruptive technology. Okay, let's keep going. So it definitely does have the potential to be truly disruptive. Second observation about 5G. And if you think about the anticipated use cases, enhanced mobile broadband, ultra-reliable low-latency communications, and massive machine-type communications. As with 3G, perhaps we know the 5 use cases, but I do not believe we fully grasp the mix that they will have, the manifestation that they will take, and their scale. And that means if we forecast today, we're going to make the same mistake that the ITU did in 2003, fundamentally missing the scale of the impact that 3G would have. Observation 3. When we think about 5G, this is taken from Ericsson's mobile subscription outlook. So this is the number of global mobile subscriptions spread across 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. And what we see is that I speak to people a few weeks ago, I was speaking to some investors, and we were talking about this, and they said, hey, Brian, this top line, how do you expect us to invest the tens of billions of rands necessary when the top line is effectively flat? Well, the point I would make to them is we rather need to focus on that. That is the 5G opportunity. Because the reality is voice is dying. Whether we like it or not, voice is dying, whether we invest in 5G or not. What we need to look when we're thinking about investment is looking beyond the flat top line and invest in the business of tomorrow. Because otherwise the business of today will be gone in 10 years' time. So this idea that we can't invest because we only see a flat overall top line, I think is completely missing the mark in terms of the way we think about the future. And the fourth point I want to make about 5G is, remember I showed this thing that there's 8.6 million homes that we could potentially cover with fixed wireless and fiber. But the point is we'll have 18 million homes. So what happens to the other half? And I think 5G is an important part of the solution to properly connect the other 50%. So to summarize on 5G, I do believe that if we look at the history of 3G, it completely exceeded the expectations because we never understood the opportunity. I think in the case of 5G, it is the same. We sort of understand the use cases, but we don't really understand their manifestation. The opportunity, we should be looking at the growth of 5G itself and treat it as an independent investment case, not about in the portfolio of the overall investments of a telco, what are we seeing on the top line? Because that top line, if we don't invest in it, is just going to go south over a period of time anyway. So let me wrap up with a few points. When I was a young manager in the 90s, there was a book by Jim Collins called Built to Last. And one of his lessons for great firms is you need to reject the tyranny of the or and embrace the genius of the and. And I think with fiber and 5G, it's not the tyranny of the or. It is the genius of the and. The one supports the other. It is a symbiotic relationship between the two. The second point I'd like to finish with is I do believe with 5G, the future belongs to those who believe. And that if we build it, they will come. So let's push the on button and get building. Thank you very much.
Gee whiz, Prof. You were like spot on, hey? I imagine you're like spot on with your lectures as well. You know?
No.
Aren't you?
The guys suffer.
The guys suffer. I mean, the business case scenarios are absolutely fascinating. And I looked at those 3G charts, and I love the way you've portrayed the data, and I love your mind because it's so analytical. With 5G, and you look at the issues that we talk about, the spectrum in this country, et cetera, are we heading towards a traffic jam?
Look, I mean, I'm on record of saying the spectrum needs to be released. Okay, so some spectrum has been set aside for the WOAN.
Yes.
Let's get the rest of it into the market. Let's get the process going. Let's get it done, because that is the thing we can do quickly. Because the deployment of 5G will take time. It's not going to happen. It's not a year or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
It will take a while. And then it will take a while for people to actually find the use cases and start using it. So the point is, we have to get the spectrum into the market, that in the meantime, we actually can keep the economy growing, keep the industry going, keep people connected, deliver the needs that the market needs. But that is not a substitute for also investing in the 5G infrastructure.
Yeah. I'm interested to know if there's got to be a correlation between urbanization, people moving to big city centers, and the growth of data, etc. And when you look at the African continent and you look at the forecasts for the next 80 years, but it's going to accelerate pretty aggressively. I mean, they're talking about, it's like 70% of the world's most populated cities are going to be on the African continent. They talk about cities like Lagos, Kinshasa, for example, populations of over 80 million people in the next few decades. Johannesburg is one of the big ones as well. We actually have an opportunity on the continent to do something different to the rest of the world, to be able to deal with that kind of volume and demand, right? Are we thinking out of the box in this regard?
Well, look, I mean, certainly we have a history of doing something differently with mobile. We certainly in the 90s with GSM, I think it was really a leapfrog opportunity which we grasped and we really made happen. Now, with regard to urbanization, the trends for that, I think it's which comes first, and I think it's broader economic issues that are driving geographic concentration. That creates an opportunity for connecting people. It also creates incredible economic opportunities. Admittedly, these will be challenged by social challenges. So the economic opportunities will go hand in hand with social challenges, which we need to do. But getting people connected, on the one hand, enables the economic opportunity, but it also helps us manage the social challenges, because digital alienation and digital isolation is actually one of the amplifying factors of social alienation. And it's really important then that as we get this densification, geographic concentration, urbanization, that we connect these people, because without it, we're going to amplify the digital divide and the social alienation, which we're already seeing quite a lot of.
I mean, you think about a lot of stuff, and you've had a very interesting career up to now, and now you're kind of looking at macroeconomic stuff, and you're looking at the impact that technology is having on society. What keeps Professor Brian Armstrong awake at night?
Besides my students? I think there's 3 things. The first is if South Africa doesn't keep pace with the 4th Industrial Revolution. If we sort of start falling behind and further behind, because I am very concerned the world may end up in a two-track world, the digitally empowered connected world and the digitally disempowered disconnected world. And it is absolutely critical that we cannot fall into that latter category.
Are we in the precipice of falling into that latter
I think we're actually doing quite a lot of the right things.
Okay.
I do think that.
Good.
So that's the first thing, that if we get onto that track. I think the second thing that keeps me awake at night is the digital divide. Because there's no doubt we have a digital divide. And you define it, whether you define it in terms of access, which is availability, which is access and affordability,
Yeah.
whether you define it in terms of usage, which is about is it relevant, are people actually using it, or is it having benefits, we have a digital divide, and we have to solve that. And the third thing that keeps me awake at night is the ethical use of these incredibly powerful technologies
Wow.
that we see coming over the world, into the world. Not only the ethical use about sort of the usual speak about AI, but are companies using the data at their disposal ethically? Are you
alleging that Facebook has been dishonest with how they've been handling their data?
I don't want to allege anything. I know the share price is $200 billion lower than it could be.
Yeah. Now look, I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, their share price is doing well, but they actually just...
But have you tracked the share price? What happened at Cambridge Analytica?
Yes.
It took a $170 billion hit. And then it started rising again, and then people saw the results, which were the consequence of Cambridge Analytica and the loss of faith, and it lost another $100 billion. So guys, beware. Trust in your business actually has real financial implications.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at the technologies, the stuff that petrifies me the most is stuff like deep fake and fake news and cyber attacks. I mean, the responsibility that the networks have on making sure that our data is secure, I mean, it's all going through our devices. That's obviously something critical. But if you look at the top 5 things that have been identified by the World, the World Economic Forum, you look at data fraud, you look at cyber hacking, those are amongst the top 5 that are together with climate change and massive catastrophic weather conditions, for example, as the stuff that could destabilize the world.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the cyber attacking stuff, I think there's a huge potential for destabilization from non-state actors, but even more state actors.
Yes, yes.
And we know most of the big state actors are already doing it. No one wants a treaty to ban. We have a Geneva Convention for conventional war, and we have conventions around nuclear weapons, and we have conventions around chemical weapons, which by and large people follow. But we don't have a multinational convention on cyber war. And my sense is, why? Because the big guys want to keep doing it.
Interesting stuff. Professor Brian Armstrong, always difficult, is it Dr. or Professor Brian Armstrong? But we'll call you
While
Professor.
I'm still at the varsity, you can call me Prof, and
Prof.
after that you can call me whatever you want.
Prof. Brian Armstrong, thank you so much. Awesome to have you at the MyBroadband conference. One of the foremost thinkers in our country when it comes to talking telecommunications technology, Prof. Brian Armstrong. What a privilege to have him here. Privilege to have our next speaker as well. I love this man's thought process, and him and I have had many debates about IoT, and I've been using some of their technology, and it's just mind-blowing the potential that this technology has to change our lives. I'm talking about Mr. Patizwe Malingwa, the SquidNet Managing Director. Please welcome him on stage at MyBroadband 2019.
Patizwe Malingwa is the Managing Director of SquidNet, where he is responsible for building an IoT connectivity business in South Africa in partnership with Sigfox. In addition to his Managing Director role, he continues to oversee the Solutions Division for SquidNet. Patizwe has been involved in the information technology and telecommunication industry for over 2 decades, having held senior management level positions. Before joining SquidNet, Patizwe was the head of application strategy at Life Healthcare Group, and he was in charge of the IT application strategy and software development for the group. He also consulted with both Max Healthcare and Life Healthcare Group in his previous position with the organization. Patizwe completed his executive MBA from the Graduate School of Business, Cape Town, where he continues to guest lecture. He is also a Singularity University faculty candidate. Please welcome Patizwe to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aki. Thank you. That was an incredible intro. I wish I could just be introduced like that every day. It's like coffee. Good morning, everybody. I'm so excited really to be here. I think what I like, one of these things that I like about MyBroadband is I get to listen to like mind-blowing, my mind's still going with the last 3 talks that we heard, but we get to engage with you guys, and I think what I appreciate is discussing the future and what we expect out of kind of our continent. I think back to about the turn of the century, which is the year 2000, and I think of the future that we kind of are in. I remember just now Rashad talking about these choices that we have to make and the types of futures that we want. And this is one of the futures that I think we avoided. And it is by doing conferences like this where we get together, where we think, but more importantly, you get to talk to the people that actually do and shape this future. I think it was Abraham Lincoln and a lot of others afterwards who said the best way to predict the future is to create it. So in less than a decade from that point, we've kind of changed that word hopeless, into a word rising, something that is uprising, a more positive one. In fact, so much so that on the right-hand side, that cover of The Economist came out in March this year, and we're starting to see not just the belief of Africa in itself, but a lot of foreign companies coming in and realizing the opportunity that we have here. Because beyond just us doing something economically, it's quite amazing what you can achieve when we start talking about exactly what Prof. Brian Armstrong was talking about, which is sorting out this digital divide, right? And when I think about Africa, nothing really kind of changes for what we are here to do when it comes to creating our future, right? In about 2015 or so, there was a report that came out and talked about life expectancy. And I just didn't like the headline. The headline said South Africa has got the lowest life expectancy in the world. They weren't far off wrong from that, but I thought that's the kind of work that we need to be doing in terms of whatever we're doing. If you look at that digital divide, remove the word digital, it's that divide, it's that Gini coefficient, right? And when I looked at this graph, what they did is they plotted the life expectancy throughout the world looking at various regions in 1970, and then they looked at it again 40 years later. And the goal of, if you're on this graph, I know you can't see quite the detail, is if you look at the red line, that horizontal line, you want to move as far right as possible from that line, because that means you're succeeding. You're changing your life expectancy of the region. When I looked at it, one of the things I personally thought of was, yeah, it must be high income. You know, if you've got lots of money, you're going to have a good life expectancy, but B, you'll be able to shift that life expectancy. But when we look at those high-income countries, not much. We're talking about at tops 10 years that they've done in that period. But when we look at the low-income areas, and in particular Asia, they managed to do even more than their high-income areas when you talk about Taiwan and all of this. And that's really what they did when they took advantage of the third industrial revolution. So now sitting in this fourth industrial revolution, we've kind of squandered that third industrial revolution for lots of different reasons, but we sit at a point where we can make a difference and we can shift in the next couple of years our life expectancy. And that's kind of what's exciting and what we're seeing when it comes to the continent. So how we improve it, and we look at that UN thing, we look at why do we die? What's one of the main reasons that affects life expectancy? And generally it's disease. There's lots of other things, but if we look at disease, there's 2 types of disease. One associated with the word cure, which is the non-communicable, and then one associated with the word prevent. If we can change the environment, we can prevent some of these diseases. And so if we look at that axis, but we look at it with Africa versus the rest of the world, when we look at the data, we do realize that if we were to try and sort out the non-communicable part, the cure part, we're actually not going to move that much further when we look at that data. We're sitting at about 652 in terms of the country, and then the rest of the world is sitting at 539. But when we look at the top end of it, we're sitting at 683 preventable diseases, things like malaria, things like TB, things like HIV, things like hepatitis, things like cholera. You know, those are the type of things that if we sort out the environments associated with those, we could do this leapfrog thing that we talk about and get to this 178. So that's the work that I think we're out here to do as South Africans and kind of working. The last time I was here, I spoke a lot about that low-income area. I spoke about it, I referred to it as the unserviced community, and the unserviced market, rather. And we heard already, even from MTN, them talking about 17 million unbanked people, 8 of them completely unbanked. And a lot of these unserviced markets. But what I want to try and do this year is get a bit more meatier, a bit more real, and a bit more in South Africa, and introduce you to some of these communities. So I'd like us to just take a look at this video.
This place is rural. This area is far from the city, far from the activities of the economy.
Some they call it forgotten people. Job course, it looks like we are forgotten by our municipality and our government. Job course. Since I have been born, I never seen a civic delivery in this village. Yeah. I'm sitting here with my chief, MyBroadband. Is the one who is leading those 3 villages, Kwakwani, Mbodi, and then Matatan. And he is in charge of these 3 villages.
So I'm feeling good now about this project. So I want to thank the University of Johannesburg.
Solar panel, they'll be able to open the bakery where they'll be baking bread.
So which means we are going to eat bread, fresh bread from the village. Before we were waiting Christmas to come, Good Friday to come, if visitors to come, just because we can come with bread and then we start to eat bread. So now it's going to be much easier. And then bread in this side is very expensive just because they do charge transport. They said this place is too far. So you need to pay 10 rand, you need to pay 15 rand for per loaf.
I'm very glad with the bakery, and I think this bakery it will help everyone who stays in Kwakwani, Matatani, Mbodi. Before, we started to eat bread mainly on the Christmas days. So now every day we will get bread here at Kwakwani. Every morning we will eat bread.
It's the high-risk malaria site area in this Kwakwani. Every year, more than 20 people go to clinic affected by malaria. Malaria linked to Donald Fraser affected the malaria.
So they came and installed solar pump.
The boil water is better than the river water because the boil water is coming from down.
Project connection and the university and all the sponsors there.
Never to take life for granted. Appreciate what you have.
Okay, so that video was brought to you by Schneider Electric. That's the village of Kwakwani, and those students are the students from the University of Johannesburg. And I think about what they did, and I kind of want to tell you the story of what they did to this village, how they used technology to move that communicable disease death rate kind of down. This is a lot of them. They're from the electrical engineering. And they did a couple of things that I think are quite amazing in terms of Kwakwani. The first thing that they did is they thought, this is a very big project and we want to do it in stages that can be consumed by this village. This village has got about 100 people in it and about 35 households. So in that video you already saw 3% of all of Kwakwani, right? And what they first did is they put up solar panels, and from those solar panels they were able to produce electricity, and they put up a couple of street lights in the community. And for the first time they had electricity in that area. Then from that, that video that we saw now is they dug up and put a borehole and a whole solar pump system so that they can have fresh water into the village. Now, when they spoke about that malaria, they were suffering about 35 cases of malaria per season, or per year. And they've dropped that down from 105 all the way down to 5, right? And then from there they thought, okay, now we've got the basis, we've got the electricity and the water sorted, what else can we do for this community? And a lot of the children couldn't walk the 6 kilometers to the closest primary school until they were a certain age. So it was an opportune environment to put up a creche with the technology that they had. But this creche also starts doubling in the nighttime versus the daytime, where it starts sorting out these kids that are going to primary, walking 6 kilometers, or the students that are in high school that have to walk a further 18 kilometers, and giving them a place to start doing their homework in the middle of the night. From that, of course, you also saw the bakery. The bakery is a very big initiative. It started giving them bread. They were literally getting bread once a year. You know, that's how much bread cost for them. It was a luxury, so they'd get it around Christmas time. Now they're able to produce more loaves than they have people in that village, to a point where they can start selling more bread into the neighboring villages. And then finally, in the creche, what they did last year is they put up the first television. In 2018, there's a village that got TV for the very first time. And what that brought from that education social ill is it started bringing educational content to the people who didn't have the opportunity to go through a schooling system. So now you have a very fully fledged Gwakwane kind of 2.0. With these assets, the biggest worry that the community had was how our lives have changed right now. What will happen if we lose these assets? So they assigned 2 people from the village who were tasked with ensuring that, you know, the boreholes are always working, ensuring that the bakery is working, that maintenance kind of crew. But as they went through the stages in terms of putting this technology into Gwakwane, they realized that the level of expertise, I think Rashad called it appropriate skills, wasn't at the point that you can sort out a borehole and you can sort out a fridge and you can sort out a solar pump. So I wanted to maybe just give you a picture of what would happen if they lost water for a day or for 2 days. That fresh water system allowed them to plumb a tap into each one of those 35 households. A lot of those households have now got food security because they're able to do vegetable gardening. They do it so well that, again, even there, they're producing a surplus and they're starting to sell into the community. So with these very simple technologies, they're able to now become an income-generating village. They've changed their economic outlook. And when it comes to that increased life expectancy, if you've dropped your malaria cases by over 100 in 3 seasons, you've definitely shifted that needle towards the right. But what if that borehole breaks? One of the downsides of being in an area like Gwakwane is the reception when it comes to cellular is not the most ideal. Some of the villages around them have got Edge and they've got GPRS, but they just happen to sit in this zone where their cell phone service is very intermittent. And then on top of that, of course, they've got no electricity because, as they call themselves, the forgotten people, some of them have never seen service delivery in their lifetimes. So what the University of UJ students did is they went out and they looked for what's available in terms of technology, 5G, 4G, 3G, Wi-Fi, fiber, what can we get into this community? And what they settled on was we need a network that can run off very little power, because the power is a scarce resource and it is a asset to the community that they wouldn't want to lose out on. So they contacted us as SquidNet. We run Sigfox, low power network, and we went out there and we were able to find a hill, a nice suitable hill where we could put up this infrastructure, which is really what you see right there is an entire base station, an entire antenna that could get to all the assets that they have in that field. And then the borehole broke, just as they feared. And what's interesting is what happened to it is what I'm excited about when I think about the Internet of Things. Somebody didn't have to go and see that the borehole had broken. The borehole knew that it had broken with the sensors that it was attached to it. So it knew it was in distress, and it sent out a message to the University of Johannesburg. They got the message, they assembled a team, and they shot out to the village as quickly as possible. They managed to fix that borehole. They managed to keep the water uninterrupted without the citizens of Gwakwani even realizing. And for me, that's the power of IoT. Moving from a world where we're just continuously generating data, but needing a very high skill to look at it, to the asset itself actually speaking and getting us to react to that situation. But the nice thing about IoT, it's beyond just reaction, right? I think I always say from IoT, you do get three things. You get an ability to alert something, and what you're seeing on the screen now is the ability to also monitor things remotely, because now they had remote visibility to this village. They could attach sensors at a very, very low cost that run off battery so that if they do lose power, they can know what's happening on those assets. But the third one, which is the holy grail of just not IoT, but the holy grail of the fourth industrial revolution, is for us to start generating the kind of insight at a level that we can consume and understand so that we take action. And we take action in time so that villages like Gwakwani do not lose out on this asset. I know you can't see a whole lot of that screen, but focus on the dials. And for me, that is actionable insight. The dial has got red, amber, green, right? So at this point, the borehole hasn't broken, but when the dial moves into red, all of us know red means impending disaster. So you can now start sending a team out and fixing this thing and moving into a space of preventable, with very simple technologies that are within reach for the low-income people as well. I think the low-power wide area network, or as we like to call it, SquidNet, is making a very big difference when it comes to this population coverage that we've been talking about. We heard MTN talk about 95% coverage. We need that from all of our technologies, from 5G, 4G, 3G, 2G, and even low power area network. I think Sigfox loves to call that network 0G. It'll grow on me. But it really is about having complete coverage to these areas so that we can increase that life expectancy. When we look at that area, we really cover it now over 90% in terms of outdoor. But more importantly, even in our suburbs, when we're getting into our homes in the metros, indoor also counts, because we can use this technology to monitor our water, monitor our water usage. I've got a swimming pool that started leaking, and I wasn't aware it was leaking until my swimming pool alerted me to say there's a possible leak here. And when you're starting to put IoT devices indoor, the coverage is also very important, and we cover that quite well indoor as well. But when I talk about assets, a lot of our assets are sometimes on the road. So from a SquidNet point of view, we also looked at assets in transit, and we said, if we're looking at a vehicle as an asset, the occupants of a vehicle as an asset, or the goods that the vehicle is transporting as an asset, we need to be able to, at all times, be able to cover and listen to that asset once it goes into distress. So even there, we've got over 90% coverage. And what excites me isn't the paved road coverage that we have, but when it comes to gravel roads, we've got over 500,000 kilometers covered there as well. So beyond a village like Gwakwani, it goes into every industry, and that's what kind of IoT does for us. Whether that industry is below the ground, like mining, or above the ground, things like agriculture or manufacturing, shipping those goods, like I said, assets in transit, into our cities, into our stores, and eventually into our homes. We need a network that is able to allow assets to speak. And sometimes it's not even just the asset, it's the environment that those assets sit in. Because we, as much as continuous is beautiful and continuous is something that we can look at, the asset itself needs to be empowered to tell us when it is in distress so that we can take actionable action, I guess. And beyond that, of course, get into that world of actionable insight. So my challenge for all of you here today, and growing from that unserviced community, is let's remember the forgotten people of Gwakwani and remember more villages that are like Gwakwani. And I throw the gauntlet down again, but become a bit more tangible when I say, if Asia in that 1970 to 2010 were able to change their life expectancy by 30 years, we can do the same using 4IR. So let's, in the next 30 years, increase our life expectancy by 30 years through innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patiswe. Man, that was such an inspiring story, you know. And I mean, you guys get me to test some of the stuff that you're working on, and I've got to tell the audience. I mean, I've got one of your very simple, simple for you guys, but you know, I've got this thing stuck on my fridge door. And every time I open and close my fridge door, I get a signal on my phone.
Yes.
Every time there's any kind of vibration, I get a signal on my phone. If there's a change in temperature in my home, I get a signal on my phone. And then, of course, you've got that GPS locator, which is using your network, which is extraordinary. What kind of trends are you seeing with regards to SquidNet and IoT and these similar devices? I mean, these are the nice fun stuff, but I'm sure there's a lot of business applications that are running on your network, right?
Absolutely, and what we're seeing is a lot of companies that are addressing South Africa's ills are starting to use our network quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the top priority in our ills, when we look at Cape Town, we look at the water drought, and we're starting to see water meters and water metering being a very big driver when it comes to IoT, and then security as well is very big in our area. So we're seeing a lot of what's nice about what our network is. It's complementary. So a lot of the guys are using telematics. They're looking forward to 5G. They want that low latency. You want to be able to control the car, but in our country there's also crime. There's also people that can jam your vehicle, and we want to know when you're in distress. So what they're starting to use is our network, because it's virtually unjammable unless you've got a military truck, and you work with those military guys, which a lot of us don't have. And one of our engineers always jokes and says, and when you blast that EMP, the least of your worries will be Sigfox connectivity.
But it's you guys are going to stand again here today.
We absolutely do.
Right at the back there. So go and visit the stand. They've got some amazing, interesting stuff that they're working on. Are you at liberty to divulge how many connected devices you have on the SquidNet network?
It's, I'm not yet allowed to say that, but I am allowed to say that we've got over 1,000 base stations that cover the country now, and each base station has the ability of listening to 1 million messages and holding 1 million messages should anything happen.
Wow, so you've got 1,000 base stations. Each base station has the ability to listen to 1 million messages.
So that means at any one point in time, we can listen to 1 billion messages.
Wow, that's amazing. And so it's all little small chunks of data that's just going through your network constantly. And of course, it's a separate network, right? So you're not reliant on, you know, the 3G networks, etc. This is your own band that you've got. Are you reliant on other networks as well?
At the back of it, we are reliant. So we're very excited about fiber. We're very excited about mobile. We are partners of mobile companies, of fiber companies, because we co-locate in terms of the towers. But we are a separate network. We run on the free spectrum, which is 868. And the beauty about that one is, I always say, it's like the SOS days.
Yes.
You know, if your ship is in distress, you don't want to send a message and somebody goes, "Who are you?"
Exactly.
Aki, are you in distress, Aki? But before you tell me, can you prove you're Aki? Can you click on these 3 bridges to show that you're a human being?
No, absolutely. But I think ultimately where SquidNet wants to go is, and I love this analogy that I heard many years ago when they spoke about IoT. The moment you have this data and you're collecting lots of amounts of data from different sources, you can now start putting in predictive analytics and algorithms and almost turn your network into like a central nervous system. So you know exactly what's going on with regards to temperature, and then you can start predicting things before they actually happen, right?
Absolutely.
And that's ultimately where you guys are going with
100%, and I think that's why we named the company SquidNet, because, you know,
all the tentacles.
According to Rishad Shah, a squid has over 1 billion sensors on its body. And what we want is we want to have a network that has the ability to listen to 1 billion sensors.
Awesome stuff, Patiswe. Thank you so much. As a gift from the team at MyBroadband.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's Patiswe Malinga from SquidNet. He's a managing director. And do yourself a favor, go and visit their stand. They've got such cool technology that these guys are working on. Right, next up is Faoud Siddiqui. Faoud Siddiqui is the senior partner and vice president for Bell Labs Consulting. Please welcome Faoud on stage to MyBroadband 2019.
Fawad Siddiqui is Senior Partner at Bell Labs Consulting, with a focus on future economics and value creation. He is also head of the regional consulting practices for the Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific and Japan. Fuad has over 20 years of experience in the ICT industry, spanning across North America, Europe and Asia. He is well known for shaping the industry growth agenda and advising ICT sector clients on diversification strategies. Fuad's focus areas include new business models around automation, and he has authored the Future of Enterprise chapter of Bell Labs' Future X Network book. Prior to joining Bell Labs, Fuad worked at Bell Canada, Ericsson, Nokia Siemens Networks and ran an advisory firm consulting on new market opportunity assessments and entry. Fuad holds a master's degree in business and management from York University in Canada and a Bachelor of Engineering from Dalhousie University. He is also a member of Professional Engineers of Ontario, Canada and a certified professional engineer. Please welcome Fuad to the stage.
All right. Hello, everyone. Delighted to be back in a lovely country, South Africa. As you know, I'm a big admirer of the potential of South Africa and the people of South Africa. What I'm going to do next for the next 15, 20 minutes, I'm not going to talk about products, and I'm not going to talk about how great Nokia is, because that's business as usual. We are leading the pack along with others on 5G. We have 50+ commercial contracts in 5G, 100+ engagements, but as I said, that's business as usual. I'm going to talk a little bit about an attempt to talk to you and lead you on a journey of Bell Labs' view of the future and the narrative that and associated innovations that it has, and argue that foundational to all our futures is networking technologies, and 5G in particular, and the corresponding network effect that it creates for us. And that network effect should have profound implication to our society, our industries, our people, and humanity at large. And once we recognize that, all policy, regulation, spectrum, rights to infrastructure, investments, partnership, new business models, all follow from there. So here we go. It's going to be a quick tour of the future. So one of the important points made, this is by Paul Krugman, a famous economist from Princeton. Productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it's almost everything. Think about it for a second. There is not much in human history or our existence that hasn't been about improving our productivity. Whether it's in the sector of agriculture, where we develop tools and techniques to enhance the crop yields, we develop transportation methods to go faster from point A to point B. At the end, it's all about productivity. So why do I make this point? I make this point because this is where we are, and this is our problem. This is data from the United States, but it sort of applies globally. This graph is showing us that for the first and second industrial revolution, call it the physical goods and the networks age, where a number of physical networks came together, the health and sanitation networks, transportation network, communication networks, electricity networks, they all came together, diffused to a certain point and created this aggregation magic where we had seen a huge spike in productivity growth rates back in the 50s and 60s. But after that, so-called the third industrial revolution, or I call it the consumer internet era, or the digital goods and the networks age, productivity growth rates have fallen almost 1/3 what it used to be over the last 50 years. Now that should get us all concerned and alarmed. What if all the investments that we made in ICT hasn't resulted into the uptick that we expected? So what we need to do is to take a pause and think and reflect a little bit what we have done up until this stage and what we need to do going forward. So here's our view. After all the innovations in networks, web platforms, cloud services, smart devices, we are here. This is what most people do with their mobile phones. Right? It's rather sad because we have built all this intelligent infrastructure and we have basically allowed ourselves to be distracted by consuming pointless, trivial media and entertainment. I don't know if Godfrey is here. Next time I will use that clean stuff that we have been using. But and when we're not doing this, we are doing this. This is a survey from Mary Meeker's Internet Trend, where she says the fastest growing in mobile internet applications is shopping. It's no surprise because the consumer internet as built is premised on a business model of advertising. So when you do that, you get people shopping. But that hardly has any relationship to the economic and social uplift of economies and nations. And that's what we need to really change in the new era that we're going to be entering. So where we are going next? We are going to focus in the next era, call it the 5G or Future X era, on a new segment. It's going to be industrial and business-centric. Of course, it also means small, medium businesses as well. But here is a study from a Tech CEO Council that shows us how big that future could be for us and how impressive that sort of transformation could be. So what you see here is what we have done in the declining part of the productivity era that I talked about. We have focused on relatively easy things to digitize: media, finance, e-commerce, some journalistic services and others. And that represents 30% of the pie chart, the share of GDP. And we have seen 2.7% annual productivity growth in that sector, so that's good. But what we haven't done is address the 70% part of our physical worlds, our mines, our factories, our warehouses, our logistics, our transportation, our government. That 70% now needs to be the focus for us going forward, because that 70% has only 0.7% growth. And what also hasn't happened in that era is the investments in ICT. Look at this, 70% of investments in ICT has gone to the 30% of that segment, and only 30% of the investments in ICT went to the 70% of it. We're going to reverse that in the new era. Another way of thinking about this, how big this transformation could be, is what we call is a collision of ICT and OT. ICT has done relatively well for itself. That's the stuff that we have built so far. But it hasn't collided with OT, OT being operations technology. That's the stuff that runs our physical world, our factories, our warehouses, our ports, our harbors. That basically they use proprietary bespoke technologies, often derived from Ethernet spec and radio spec, but they're often closed systems. They are wired, not wireless. They generally don't innovate very much. But here, what they're really good at is the mission criticality aspect of it. Highly reliable, highly secure networks. We think in the carrier grade, in the mobile networks that we have built networks that are 99.8% reliable. So 0.2% failure, so sometimes you get a call drop. It's a super good mobile network. These guys are 6.9 reliable, 6.9. So suddenly we have to use the ICT technologies that we have built to address the requirements of this industry, that's 70% of the industry. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by using all the advanced radio layers, ultra low latency, cores that are dynamic and can self-heal. We're going to network slice them to support the SLAs required by these industries. These are the next generation requirements that are driving Release 16 and Release 17 requirements for the industry. So it's the collision of ICT and OT that's really going to be foundational for this next chapter that we're going to write that will essentially help us in the socioeconomic growth as well and the transformation of these industries as well. Another data point I want to share, this is a study that we commissioned, is if we're going to digitize and automate those industry sectors, we would have to build 14 million new sites over the next 10 years. Compare that to what we have today, the total number of macro base stations globally is 7 million. So you see it's almost a 2x multiple. So you see how it was 30% and 70% and now it's 7 million, 14 million. So the opportunity is huge. In terms of the economics of that, it's not about, the model is now changing. It's no longer about extracting more from the wallet of the consumer. It's about creating overall economic value. So if you create that overall economic value, and in this case, we are projecting around 4 to 11 trillion over the next 10 years, by 2025, is 30% of that will be fed back to building infrastructures and would be fed back into economies. And so there will be a little bit of that cohesion effect as well if you will create. So that's the industrial part. Now let's talk about the human part, because human is very central to the equation and 5G and things of that sort. So this is a definition that we came up with. I don't know if you have looked at it. It's transhumanism. Lots of interesting definitions out there. Look it up, pretty wacky stuff out there. But the possibility and desirability of fundamentally improving the human condition through applied reason, especially by developing and making widely available technologies to eliminate aging and greatly enhance human intellectual, physical, and psychological capacity. So focus on that part. Enhance human intellectual, physical, and psychological capacity. So in some way, this is how we look at it. This is me underneath the suit. I look a little bit better. But basically what we are trying to do is, we as humans have a set of limited capabilities which we have to extend. We would have to extend our brains using AI in the cloud, because we have limited computational power. There are tasks which we are not very good at, so we can get an assistance function from the cloud. We can get help from distributed cloud architectures, the edge cloud part, because we would need the same response times of our neurological brains, if you will. We can use extra muscular exoskeleton stuff to be able to help us on tasks which are not human tasks, but which can help us evolve into areas which might not be particularly good for humans. We can look for extra sensory things. We can feel beyond our senses by leveraging some of these assets. But at the core of all of this is the central circulatory system or the central nervous system, and that's 5G. Because 5G connects all of this in real time with high availability. So don't think human is not part of the equation. Human is very much part of this equation, and think of 5G as the human network as much as it is the industrial network as well. So to summarize, 3 things which underpins all of this industrial human revolution that we're talking about. The first we talked about is the augmented digital human network. Think of 5G as enabling us humans to have this digital sixth sense that allows us to optimally interact with a digitized physical world. But also on the networking side, what a revolution this is going to be. So far in the industry, we have focused on building higher capacities. We have looked at efficiency and spectrum. We have done limited stuff on the spatial dimensions. But even beyond that, there will be 3 dimensions of reliability, 3 dimensions of latency. So think of 5G as a 9-dimensional evolution the industry has not seen before. So this is transformative in many ways. The second point is massively improved human-machine productivity. So we have been talking to a lot of sectors. Each sector is going through their own digitization and automation thing, with or without the need for ICT, because remember we talked about the OT world itself. I'll give you an example. We have been talking to shipping ports. They have marked a lot of capital to sort of automate and digitize, use these use cases. One of the port operators told me, one of my KPIs is how many containers can I move in and out of the day? Which means if I can run my cranes 24/7 in an autonomous fashion, that will help me quite a bit. Because there's a back-to-back impact. If the cranes are running 24/7, then the ship docking time at the docks could also be removed. The ships can be in and out as well. So there's a back-to-back business case in doing that. So there's a huge potential for us to be able to push fiber deep into the network, build hyperlocal edge cloud architectures, which actually will have resident intelligence. All the expertise, the AI systems, the industrial control systems will reside at the edge to try to automate some of these industries. So they have 2 parts. They go it themselves and start to do what they're doing, but we then bring the general purpose nature of 5G to be able to help them and offer them automation as a service and try to enhance their capability. So edge clouds and being proximous to these places will be strategic and a strategic differentiator. So now with that in mind, if you're going to go close and we're going to build these distributed cloud architectures, this is an important point, which is the harmonization of global and local. Because of this ultra-low latency requirement that we have to service the needs of these enterprises, the reliability and the security consideration, we have to be close. And so local is going to matter a lot. So therefore, there will be a rebalancing, if you will, where the global service creation companies, in order for them to be relevant in the scheme of things on a national level, they have to partner. They have to deliver contextual services with high reliability and ultra-low latency. So local and edge cloud really matters. This sort of rebalances global and local, not because of any political agendas, because things have to be done locally. Edge clouds is the architecture around which 5G is going to be built. So once we start to understand this, we start to then also modulate in my team, the bunch of economists who start to think about what is the impact for different countries in terms of their investments and policy around different sectors, and even intersectoral impacts. So we started to look at infrastructure investment intensity, ICT investment intensity, but also importantly, the correlation between productivity and labor work hours, because what we started to realize in this new era where machines and humans work in perfect harmony, the number of labor hours worked, the lower it is better actually going forward. So there's an inverse correlation to that. All of this needs to be fed back to our policymakers where we start to think about how do we then create on a country level a mechanism that allows us to inclusively create value, share value, and democratize value. And this is a work that we are doing at the moment in Bell Labs Consulting. So where are we going next? So we talked about the first and second industrial revolution, the time of the 4 great physical networks, and we have seen a massive increase in productivity growth rates. Then we talked about the cat and the shopping era, and we've seen what's happening now, and I think I've seen one of the speakers also showed some results of the GDP impact and what's going on in South Africa. But now what we have modeled, and we believe that we are a cusp not as the next technological revolution, but a human economic productivity revolution. There will be a tsunami of wave from 2030 to 2033 if we do these things right. We do these things not in isolation, but as a community together, as an industry, where we incite and invoke and drive those policy frameworks that allows us to do this. Because this era where we have automated goods and human-machine networks age, and the future value is going to be created by the industrial internet, not the consumer internet. So, by the way, this industrial internet concept, as I explained to you, is a little bit more around the mission criticality, and so therefore, more emphasis has to be put in there from a hyperlocal perspective. So the 70-30 that we talked about and the 14 and the 7 million base stations, I think those are the things that will drive, and the whole augmentation of human potential. That is going to drive the economic uptake as well. So to put this in practice, what we have done in Bell Labs, in our headquarters in New Jersey, we have opened the world's first 5G end-to-end network, where we can now, in reality, model for you use cases of immersive consumer broadband industrial automation, where you take different networks, 5G core, 5G access, transport, data center orchestration, advanced maintenance, analytics, security, and when we multiplex them through a converged end-to-end slice network, we can see differential value that can come out and how some of the resultant industries could be impacted. So if you're in the United States, please come by and have a look. It's going to really open your eyes in terms of the possibilities of the future. And since we are Bell Labs, we cannot stop. We have to look into the future, and we have started to look at the concepts of beyond 5G and 6G. And so we've talked quite a bit about the intertwining of our physical and the digital worlds. Now our researchers have started to look at the human biological aspects, how it operates with the twined world as well. So we expect early trials to happen 2030 onwards around 6G, but the work is now already started to happen at Bell Labs. So with that, I will leave you with this. We are Nokia Bell Labs. We remain the digital innovations factory of the world, and I invite you to join us to enable this vision of the future. Thank you very much.
I mean, I was just having a chat to Godfrey a second ago, and what you've been demonstrating as well is we are living in such exciting times.
Indeed.
Where, I mean, you cannot even put a lid on the potential that's out there. There's so much potential. There are just so many opportunities that are available for people to do things in the world, you know, and it's exciting. I mean, you've just highlighted it. But what are the things with all of this that scares you the most?
Well, what really scares me, something very close to my heart, the more I talk to service providers, telco service providers across the globe, I fear we are getting it wrong. We are focusing too much on the consumer segment, and consumers by virtue will benefit anyways from new investments in 5G.
Yeah.
We absolutely need to broker this enterprise and industrial model, in a much more creative, aggressive way. I know, I think one of the gentlemen talked about the fact that they want to increase the enterprise share.
Yes.
But some of the things that we talked about in terms of automating these industries has a far-reaching out consequences for the nation like South Africa as well.
Yeah.
So I think that is an area that we need to have more dedicated focus, and it's not just the telco itself, it's the ecosystem that has to come together.
Yeah.
So my worry is that industries are now grappling with the idea of automating and driving more efficiencies. We need to be at the rescue by saying, here's the power of 5G, and we need to evangelize this to make sure these use cases can be automated, and therefore the overall impact of economics that we create can have a trickle-down effect as well.
So, I mean, you're one of the players in the ecosystem, and you may not want to may want to answer this question, but this whole thing that's going on with Huawei and the US, for example, and, you know, I don't need to expand on what's going on, but surely it's not healthy for 5G. You know, we need as many players and collaboration as amongst many players to help grow 5G. I mean, surely this is going to stifle the growth of 5G with what's happening right now.
Well, we don't want to comment on the political aspects of this, but I think you're right. I think the more the collaboration there is in the industry, the better it is for spurring growth. But I think I leave those decisions to our politicians to make. I think we are committed as Nokia to drive a more innovative agenda, and as Bell Labs, which is the innovation arm of Nokia, we are actually pioneering not just 5G, and we're starting to look at 6G as well.
Yeah, 6G, but it really hasn't been defined yet, right?
We are at the pioneering stages of defining that. That's the symbiotic relationship between a physical, digital, and the biological world.
Okay.
And that needs to drive a new era of sensory and cognitive aspects for humans going forward. Again, it's not today, don't be scared, it's out there at the moment, but research has started yet. But the foundations have to, I think Dr. Armstrong has said a number of good things about policy making as well, and I think I really encourage the movers and shakers of South Africa to really come together to really harness the potential of what 5G can bring, and try to really do the right things, and not just for incremental profits, but look at the bigger picture as well.
Realistically, when you look at 5G and you look at Africa as a continent and South Africa, when do you forecast 5G maturing in this market to be used? I know Professor Armstrong said that whenever the first 3G phones came into place, I mean, they accelerated everything. But when do you see 5G maturing? In the more mature markets, they're talking, you know, three years from now. Are we in the same kind of time frame?
I think, as you know, most of the launches that we've done in 5G is around consumer enhanced mobile broadband space. The stuff that I'm talking about is in the early phases, if you will. But this is the time, if you don't intercept it now, you will miss the boat. Because the example I was giving you on shipping ports, they have current requirements of automating their operation. They have 300 autonomous driving vehicles in that large industrial complex. They have 200 cranes, hundreds of high-definition cameras. So when you multiplex all of these networking requirements around bandwidth, latency, reliability, the answer is today. So if you build fiber there and you build edge clouds, you can service them today. You don't have to wait until 3 years. Of course, there's a device part and the sensory part, but it's not impossible for you to start approaching these segments and having a very consultative dialogue with them in how to create this new value jointly.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Aki.
much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. There's a gift from the team at MyBroadband. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your interesting insights. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the man you've been waiting for, I hope you can recognize him from last year's MyBroadband conference, because he's trimmed his beard quite considerably. He's gone for a makeover of note. I'm talking about Jan Vermeulen. He's one of the smartest guys I know in the room, and I love talking to Jan, and I love his insights, and he's going to share some of his insights in the next panel. So I'm going to ask Jan Vermeulen to come and join me on stage together with his panelists, another super smart guy, Mr. Jannie van Zyl, Calvin Collett, Akram Mohammed, but I'll let my dear friend Jan Vermeulen introduce them formally. But please welcome the next panel, and it's going to be hosted by Jan Vermeulen, MyBroadband editor-in-large. They're going to be talking about tech, and please give them a warm welcome.
MyBroadband editor-at-large, Jan Vermeulen, will host this panel and is joined by Jannie van Zyl, Calvin Collett, and Akram Mohammed. Jannie van Zyl is the Executive Head of Innovation at Vodacom, where he is responsible for introducing new ideas and transformation into the business based on industry trends, best practices, and customer insights. Calvin Collett is the Chief Executive Officer at Supersonic and has been instrumental in building the company into one of the leading fiber service providers in South Africa. Akram Mohammed is the Chief Technology Officer at Huawei Consumer Business Group SA, where he is responsible for implementing the technology and innovation strategies for the company. Please welcome Jan, Yanni, Calvin and Akram to the stage.
Thank you very much. And we've got a fantastic discussion today, and it's just before lunch. So I'm just going to jump right into it so that we can get through as many of the questions as possible. But before we start, I just have to say, Yanni van Zyl has been at every single MyBroadband conference, I think at every single one of these panels since 2005. So thank you very much, Yanni. We really appreciate it. If we can give him a... And since you're the senior on the panel, we're going to put you in the hot seat first, Yanni. 5G standards are not yet finalized, yet networks around the world are claiming to launch 5G, like launching commercial 5G services. Is this the same as the 4G situation 10 years ago, where everybody was claiming like HSPA Plus networks were 4G and trying to capitalize on the marketing of the term, or is there something else at play here? Is this actually legitimate this time?
Yeah, so no, you're right. You know, if someone's going to try and pass off a 4G network as 5G, we're probably going to have the same problem like we did 10 years ago when someone launched a clear 3G network and then tried to brand it 4G. But it's not quite true that the standards aren't finalized. I think there's a lot of confusion with these different terms that we use. We've got the IMT definition, so IMT 2020, for example, is for 5G one. And then you've got the standards bodies that implement those, and the 3GPP creates something called releases. And certain releases match to the IMT requirements, and then the marketing people get involved and they put Gs on top of the stuff. So, you know, when it was 1G and 2G, we all understood it, and then it got a bit confusing. But right now, release 15 is out and is available, and that is what we've been trialing and what people are launching on. So the first version of release 15 has been out for quite a while, but there's something called non-standalone, where you need your 4G network to help. The 5G network standalone has now been ratified, or it's being ratified. Release 16 is already being worked on, and release 17 is already being planned. So there's actually very clear standards, and so far we've not seen anyone trying to jump a gun, you know, by rebranding our older technology. So the 5Gs that you see right now that people are claiming they're launching are actually part of a standard. So there is a standard. The standard will keep on evolving.
Okay, okay. Well, that's good news this time around, the term not getting hijacked for marketing purposes. Akram, in the spirit of starting off with difficult questions, elephant in the room, what's happening with the US trade ban, and what does it mean for Huawei's phones in South Africa?
You know, I think the situation is pretty fluid currently. It's quite unfortunate that Huawei, being the #1 telecommunications provider globally, is caught in the crosshairs of this very ugly trade conflict. We're positive, we're being optimistic that it could be resolved and justice will prevail, but I think we're not under any illusions. And these external factors have forced us to adapt, to increase our capability, to innovate on a software front. And that's certainly what we have done with our announcement of Harmony OS just a few months ago in terms of the IoT space. And right now as well, with our devices being Android or AOSP, but we are moving on to Huawei mobile services to create and to cater for the lack of Google services. So we've done quite a bit in that space, but really it's forced us to grow, and I think in the near future we'd look at Huawei as a software company as well.
It's interesting how when you're kind of pushed into a corner, you sometimes do your best innovation.
Yeah, and I think you know that's where we are right now, and we're embracing that situation, because had this not happened, we would not be looking to be able to grow ourselves and our capability on the software front. I mean, for hardware, we all know that Huawei has grown substantially over the years. Throughout this period, even while we were going through this, we've been posting double-digit growth figures globally, and our global numbers have just seen a 24% increase year on year while we're sitting with this trade conflict. So it's been pretty impressive, but I think we have been lacking in terms of being able to be self-sustaining on the software front. And these kind of circumstances have forced us to go out there and explore. So we're certainly in exciting times.
Yeah. Calvin, you're not off the hook. Smart Village didn't have a particularly good reputation when you took over the brand, and it became Supersonic. How did you turn its reputation around to become one of the top-rated ISPs in the country?
So I think we got back to basics. And I'm a great proponent of culture, number one. So the first thing we did was focus on the culture of the company. So interestingly enough, MTN does what they call the GCA, which is a group culture audit. And Smart Village had the lowest score in the entire group. So we were under no illusions that the culture in the company was broken. So we focused on that, made sure that the culture and the people were looked after. Once you've done that, it was then a focus on customer centricity. And if you've got engaged people, they are able to then help you with customer centricity, ultimately. And then was a focus on systems and processes, and ultimately simplicity at the end of the day. You know, one of the things I find that a lot of companies do is we focus on the 1% and not the 99%. So we build a process around the 1%. Let's build a process around the 99% and have a 1% that is an exception. And that creates simplicity. If you try and do it the other way around, you're forcing everyone into this bucket that was not actually built for them. So I think those are the major things that we did differently. And it's working well.
And I've heard certain things, and maybe you can confirm it, but you've called up customers personally who have complained about bad service and apologized personally. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely.
The reason I know this, sorry to interrupt you, is there's a friend of mine who has been using Smart Village at their company for the longest time, and they've had no end of trouble. And after weeks and weeks of escalating, you eventually called. And it made a very good impression.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a focus. As I say, the whole company has the same focus. We focus on the customer, and it's core to our culture. And we're not going to change that.
Yanni, so we've spoken a bit about the 5G standards. When's Vodacom going to launch 5G?
When is Vodacom going to launch?
Yes, yeah.
We launched last year, August.
In South Africa.
Oh, in South Africa. Yeah, so that's a hell of a problem, right? So it's spectrum, you know. So for some reason, spectrum always comes up in these conferences. So, but we really did launch definitely Africa's first 5G network last year, August in Lesotho. And as Godfrey mentioned about Swaziland in our case, we got the spectrum in Lesotho. So we had a progressive regulator that allocated spectrum, and we could launch. So yeah, the networks, the technology is pretty much there. So it's literally, when can we have a spectrum? You know, but haven't we been saying this for the last 15 years?
Yeah, I think for at least as long as I've been on this panel, we've been talking about spectrum. But hopefully, I say that every year. Hopefully this year it's different. But there's a lot at play now. There's a lot at stake this time around. So hopefully this year is different.
Look, we definitely get all the right messages right now. So as Godfrey also mentioned, you know, there's definitely movement now. So as previously it was all over the show, there seems to be direction. I think we can definitely speed it up, and we can at least get something this year, hopefully, and then maybe, you know, the 5G spectrum as soon as possible next year.
Akram, while we're talking about 5G, do you reckon 5G is a competitor to fiber, and what would make it a good competitor?
I don't think it's as simplistic as that, you know, just a direct competitor. I tend to agree with Professor Brian Armstrong in terms of 5G being a complementary service and technology. Because, you know, if you look at purely the investment, the capital investment on fiber, if you want to be able to, connectivity, usually people look at it just around speeds, latency, those kind of things. But actually connectivity has a potential to improve societies, economies, and those kind of things. And that's where you need scale. You need to be able to have coverage. You need to be able to access the masses. So it's not so much right now about, well, can you compete in terms of performance? Who can get 1 million people onto 200 megabits or 300 megabits? But would you be able to get 10 million people onto 100 megabits? And I think 5G has the potential to do that, and that's where it could be able to disrupt.
Calvin, are you in agreement with that? Do you reckon that fiber and 5G can coexist? How directly will they compete with one another?
No, so I think they certainly do. They do coexist, and I think it's important to have both technologies. I think there is a play, though, for a third technology or something that can access the masses. I mean, exactly like you were saying. I mean, one of the challenges that I think that we're doing at the moment, fiber is creating a bigger and bigger digital divide. You know, there are only 1.3 million homes passed on fiber, but we've got a population of 50 million people and more. So we've got to find a technology that gives access to what fiber brings from an uncapped perspective, et cetera, yet at a price point that the masses can still ultimately access. So I think there's a challenge for us as an industry to find a product that actually matches that. And it's important for us to bridge that digital divide, because if it carries on in this way, we are going to alienate more and more people. So I think it's focus, and I think it's something that as an industry we need to look at. So yes, 5G, yes, fiber, but I still think there's a play for a potential third technology to supplement what we require in the lower LSM areas.
Yanni, to that point, are you in agreement? Is there sort of like a third product that can sit there and do what neither 5G nor fiber can do?
Yeah, so I actually think we need to rephrase your question. It's not is 5G an alternative for fiber. The question is actually, is fixed wireless an alternative for fiber? And the answer is absolutely. Look at the data that Brian showed us, that we just cannot deploy fiber fast enough in this country. So some kind of wireless technology is going to be needed. So if that is true, then the question is, what is that wireless technology? And 5G is one of the players. And I would suggest that it would sit at the top end, you know, with a high speed requirements. We tend to ignore 4G. 4G has got a hell of a long life left in it. And if we get spectrum, funny enough that we mentioned that then 4G can become a really good player in fixed wireless as well. Then there are alternate technologies. There are ISM band networks. We run, for example, over 1,000 base station ISM network that sit on 5.8 gig that we used to serve people at up to 100 megabits per second. So the question is fixed wireless alternative for fiber? Absolutely, especially in South Africa. How will these different layers play? 4G will play, ISM will play, 5G will play, and they will all find their price point in that stack of services.
Okay. So not necessarily a direct competitor, but an alternative where it's not available.
I think I lost my mic. I don't think the price will be radically different. So it will be just an alternative technology. Consumers don't care what method you use to bring the data, right? You can bring it to them in a bucket. They just want to pay, you know, as little as possible for the data. So it's up to the networks to decide what's the most efficient network to deliver that broadband connection.
Akram, back to you, and sticking with 5G. So you've worked with Rain to launch 5G services in South Africa, and you've mentioned that you will be bringing MiFi devices and outdoor CPEs to South Africa with Rain. When can we expect those devices?
We have quite an extensive product portfolio. If you're looking at currently, I mean, even on our stand right now, you'll be able to see a hybrid mesh solution running on mesh and PLC. That's the Q2 Pro Wi-Fi system. That will be available next month. But we are expanding our outdoor CPEs, window CPEs, as well as MiFi solutions, and we'll have all of them by Q4, mid Q4 this year with Rain.
Okay. Kelvin, back to you. Considering the significant differences in cost price between the different fiber network operators in South Africa, why did you decide to standardize your prices across all of them, and how were you able to do this? I mean, if we look at, for example, the cost differences just between OpenServe and Frogfoot and Vumatel,
Sure.
there's quite a big disparity there sometimes.
Look, it comes back to simplicity again. There are 15, 16, 17 fiber network operators out there. Customers now have to choose which network are they on, what is the pricing, and so on and so forth. So we made a concerted effort to say, how do we simplify this for the customer? So we took how big each network was, scaled that out, worked out a model, and we actually were able to really come up with a model that makes sense for the customer. So we've got a single pamphlet, a single set of pricing. It's a single brochure, but it comes back to simplicity again. You know, the customer just wants connectivity, and as you said, whether you deliver it in a bucket or whatever else, they don't really care. If you give them 20 megs, they want the 20 megs, and it must just work. You know, the underlying network, whether it be Vumatel or OpenServe or Octatel or whoever else it is actually relevant. It's up to us as the ISPs to make sure that that journey for them is as simple as possible. And that's actually what we focused on, was how do we make this journey as simple as possible, and then take on as much of that burden so that the customers can sign up simply.
Okay. And in terms of the practicalities of that, is it just an amortization calculation that you do over time with that customer to make it work?
No, I mean, ultimately the margins are still there. It's an absolutely plausible model. I mean, we've never said we're going to be the cheapest. We are a premium brand. We do offer the full installation for free. So I think we were able to use those elements to craft a product and a product set that makes sense for the industry.
Yanni, back to you, and we've heard this a couple of times today already, but data prices have to come down. But networks have to continue to invest heavily in the technology on their networks, 5G being one of them. So how is anybody going to make money from 5G if the data prices are under as much pressure as they are?
Well, Brian showed us we just need to wait 5 years, then we make money from 5G. No, the reality is that as the network capacities are being delivered, the new use cases come. And that fills up. So clearly you're going to have two things that's going to drive uptake of 5G. The one is the elasticity of data pricing. So the cost per unit will come down, but the usage will go up, and that will drive it. And of course, all the new use cases that we think will come with 5G. And I don't think those are very imminent, and maybe to Brian's point. So enhanced mobile broadband, the very high speed services in the fixed wireless kind of space and so on. So for example, in Lesotho, it was less expensive for us to deploy 5G than fiber to enterprise customers. And so there's a use case. So you move a technology stack up, so we're bringing 5G in, and hopefully at some point 2G is going to go away, and then 3G, and the volumes will go up. So I don't think the inherent underlying, way that you price the data will change, but the volumes will drive elasticity, and there will be money to be made. But again, this is not going to be tomorrow morning. We're not going to deploy 90% penetration on 5G tomorrow morning. We're there with 4G now. And 4G in Africa is something like 7%. So 4G is going to grow, and we will capitalize on that, and 5G will start supplementing that. But look, times are tough, and there's margin squeeze, but the money will be there, I'm sure.
Okay. Akram, to that point, when are we going to see 5G modems in smartphones in South Africa? Because that seems like something that will drive uptake.
Yeah, certainly. Our plans, internationally, we've already launched a few of them, and they've been quite popular. But for South Africa specifically, we have it on the radar for Q2 2020. Of course, that will be coinciding with the launch of our new product range at that period. So that's the timeline right now for 5G modems here. And of course, the fact that we are able to hit scale globally, we are able to bring the pricing down considerably. So you'd find them not just on flagship devices, but also more on the mid-tier devices as well.
Okay. Yeah, that took a while to filter through on the 4G side. So you're saying that with 5G, we might not have to wait so long between, the iPhone 16 having it and the next step down.
We're looking early second quarter 2020 that we plan to have it in here. Yeah.
Calvin, people are complaining that, actually, before we get to that one, you've warned previously that people should not buy cheap and nasty fiber deals. What's an example of a cheap and nasty fiber deal, and why should people avoid them?
So, look, I think the challenge is this market is very saturated. So we're looking at over 100 ISPs in the fiber space. Anybody with an Excel spreadsheet and a Linux box can ultimately start an ISP. So you just got to be very careful with how you choose that ISP, what does the back end look like, and their longevity. We've seen quite a few ISPs close this year already, so it's left those customers without service. So really what I was getting at is that, it doesn't have to be the most expensive, it doesn't have to be the cheapest, but just make sure you investigate and understand what does that network give you. Your typical fiber installation is around 4,500 Rand if you take the router and the modem and the installation, etc. into account. A lot of ISPs, you're forced to pay that up front. We don't charge those fees, so you've got to take those things into account when choosing an ISP, because if you just base it on price alone, you're going to get yourself into trouble at the end of the day. There are a lot of factors to take into account, and you need to focus on that.
Okay. Could you give us an example of something that somebody should watch out for, like a factor that they should watch out for when they are comparing deals?
Look, I think ultimately it's customer base. Who's backing them? What network are they running on? There's some really big networks in this country, and a lot of ISPs are running on the back of those networks. That makes perfect sense. Where you've got an ISP who's trying to build their own little network, running on the back of a small IPT at the background, I think you're asking for trouble at the end of the day, because the longevity of that. And the reality is, our view is that you need between 50 and 60,000 customers on fiber for a profitable business. So anybody who's sort of got 500 to 1,000, etc., is really going to struggle to actually make a long-term profit in this industry. So it's my view is you've got to start to look at the bigger players ultimately, because consolidation is going to happen at some stage, and we've seen some of it already happening in this past year.
Yanni, back to you, and shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about eSIMs for just a while. Yeah, eSIMs have been seen as sort of consumer empowerment tools. So, you know, you'd be able to seamlessly switch between mobile networks as you want to, depending on who gives you the best deal on any given day. Is that a realistic way to see eSIM? What problem does the eSIM technology actually solve, if not that one?
So I think that's one of them, you know, the ability that you can virtually move your device between different operators, and you can do least cost and a number of different things that will come with eSIM. But probably the biggest one, and, you know, and Warwick can probably talk more to the point, is the fact that you don't have a physical SIM anymore. So the form factor changes, which means that this is an eSIM watch, for example. Sorry, it's not a Huawei watch. So there's no more, it's embedded in the device, so ingress is out, so your IP ratings go up, so a smaller form factor, better reliability, you can't lose the thing. So I think a lot of the physical components around it, you know, together with the logical management of it, is a huge advantage. You know, more and more we see, you know, connectors to your phones being dropped, so more and more the waterproofing of the IP ratings go up. So for me, that's one of the big things. So IoT nodes, you know, once they're in the field, they can stay there for the next 15 years, which we want. So the physical component and the fact that it's not a user replaceable element, I think, is one of the big advantages.
Mm-hmm. Akram, the question to you, do you see eSIM in the same way? What problem does it solve for you?
Yeah, I think I agree with Yanni, especially in terms of the form factor. I mean, we have managed to resolve some of the issues previously with the Watch 2 and Watch 3, etc. We've had traditional SIM cards and still managed to keep the IP rating to IP68. But I certainly see the use case in terms of being able to keep the form factor down and improve reliability and functionality on that. We have already launched products internationally. I think in a South African context, we're just looking in terms of adoption from the network operators. It's clearly happening right now. And perhaps that could be part of our plan in the near future too. Yeah.
And Calvin, people are complaining, and by people I mean municipalities, are complaining about fiber companies digging up roadways, and occasionally people complain about their driveways being dug up and so on. Sure. And you know, they're complaining about the damage and inconvenience caused by fiber contractors. What can be done to solve such problems?
Look, I think ultimately this challenge has become less and less of a problem. I mean, I think when fiber started out and proliferated, there were a lot of fiber operators who really just didn't really know what they were doing, and ultimately did create a bit of a mess. I think with the operators that are running at the moment, they really understand what they're doing, they're able to cover up things properly, and ultimately put it back into the state that it was before. In terms of going forward, I think the benefit of fiber far outweighs the initial pain that you have to go through. So I think realistically, a lot of customers have actually said, you know what, at least we're getting fiber into our area. We had no connectivity. With Telkom no longer supporting the ADSL network, it's going to become more and more relevant and more important that fiber is rolled out into certain areas. So you really want to make sure that you take the fiber opportunity when it comes your way, because you know, fiber has longevity. You can just upgrade your ONTs and OLTs and double your speeds and quadruple your speeds, etc., etc. So fiber makes sense long term. So it's a short-term pain for a long-term game, ultimately.
Agreed. Yanni, you have a lot of the same issues with way leaves as the fiber guys do, but on top of that, you also have to deal with vandals and thieves destroying your base stations. Yeah. What's the solution to that problem?
Well, a continuous and high-quality municipal supply would help a lot, but in the meantime, we need to use batteries. So it's a real problem, right? And the challenge, of course, that we have is that the criminals are always going to be more innovative than we can be. You know, as a study of innovation, I love watching criminals because they're just always 10 steps ahead of us. So there's a lot of things that we've done. You know, we try and hide the batteries, we try and cast them in concrete, to try and bury them, to try and get people not to break into it. But the end result that we see is, and I'm sure the other operators see the same, is that not only do they break into the containers to try and get to the batteries, but they destroy everything in the search for the batteries. I said a while ago, put the bloody batteries outside the base station with a big arrow that says, here are the batteries. Then at least half the money that you spend fixing your base station, you save that. But the reality is, if you're going to be on the ground, you're always going to have these challenges. So, maybe the innovative answer is to go up into the sky, and that people can't get to you. And I think we need to be thinking about it seriously. If we can't secure base stations on the ground, and we can't get access to way leaves and to property to the base station, shouldn't we be going up? And of course, a lot of people are doing it. We see the LEO networks now launching. There's 1 or 2 LEO networks already up. SpaceX originally applied for, I think, 12,000 LEO nodes to go up, and I don't know if you saw, they now very recently, in the last while now, I think the last week or so, they applied for another 30,000. Another 30,000 on top of the 12,000. So I think Musk's plan is actually to solve global warming by blanketing the planet in something that reflects the sunlight, because he wants to put up 42,000 LEO nodes. But if they can get that right, then maybe you don't need base stations anymore. So the mobile operators must be careful. They can be disrupted by someone that just says, let's just get off the ground.
Oh, well, that took a different turn than I was expecting. Thank you very much. Akram, I'm going to switch away from infrastructure concerns for just a second, but I do want to ask you about some of your plans specific to South Africa. In the past, you've announced pretty ambitious plans with regards to service, free service days, door-to-door service options, like launching service centers all over the country. How are those plans going, and where do you currently have service centers available in the country?
So those plans have been incredible. I mean, we've got 5 service centers right now, 2 in Cape Town. We've got the Mel Resort in Johannesburg, another one coming up at Menlyn, and in Durban in the Ballito area as well. And of course, our extended service partners, the likes of Vodacoms and Salty Cities and other operators, etc. We've got an entire network of around 46 at the moment, and we're hoping to expand that by a further 33 in the first half of 2020. So from a service front, I mean, you mentioned the service days as well. We have regular service days at our service centers and the partner stores, and we also do the door-to-door delivery already. So on many of our products, we will pick up, collect and deliver within 24 hours, and your device is sorted. And we're also one of the only OEMs in South Africa to operate a 24/7 call center, as well as a service hotline. So you could either call in and dial the number to give you assistance, you could email somebody and they'll be able to assist you 24/7, or on your Huawei mobile phone, we have the iCare app. So just by accessing it there, you'll be able to have a live chat and somebody will be able to assist you. All of these services are 24/7.
Okay. Well, looking forward to seeing that growth. Thank you very much. Kelvin, Cool Ideas was recently hit with what's called a carpet bombing DDoS attack. It was quite disruptive to its clients. It was a huge story. Have you seen similar attacks like that on your network? We've been hearing from other ISPs who say that they've seen similar attacks. And how do you defend against something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's DDoS attacks, or whatever you want to call them, is a phenomenon across all networks. We see it every single day. I mean, some days we have up to 50 or even 100 attacks on a single day. Others we have none. So being part of the MTN Global Network and the Global Connect Network, MTN actually has cleaners throughout the world, which actually looks out for that data and tries to clean the data before it actually gets here. So that's one of the best ways to mitigate DDoS attacks, is to try and clean it up long before it actually hits your core network. And it's very efficient because we see the attacks happening every single day, but it doesn't affect service.
Okay. We're actually out of time, but one last quick fun question for each of you, I think. Yanni, you're known for your collection of rare vintage computers that you pick up and restore. What interesting system have you got recently? What can you tell us about what you're working on right now there?
Yeah, so sure, I've got a lot of them, which is a problem. But actually the one that I was restoring last weekend is a HP 150 from the very early 80s. And what's interesting about it, it's a typical HP thing, massively over-engineered. The manuals, you get in meters, there's like 2 meters of manuals. But this thing's got a touchscreen. So in 1982, there weren't touchscreens around. So what they did is they created a grid of infrared LEDs across the screen like that. And quite a high resolution of these little LEDs with sensors. So if you touch the screen, you break 1 or 2 of these infrared beams. And I was running Windows 1.0 on this thing, and I was in Paint, and I could draw with my finger on the screen. So the point is, humans are always innovative. In 1982, the concept of a capacitive or resistor touchscreen just didn't exist, but people built a touchscreen. So that was quite cool.
Oh, that's interesting. Akram, what internet connection do you use at home, and what phone are you using right now?
Well, the phone is pretty simple, right?
But which one?
I'm using a Porsche design Huawei Mate 20.
Okay.
And internet connection, I have Vuma 200 megabits via AfriHost.
Okay, cool. Calvin, what internet connection do you have at home, and what phone are you using right now?
Well, I've got a supersonic connection, 100 meg, and I've
Symmetric?
got an iPhone 8.
Symmetric?
Symmetrical, yeah.
An iPhone 8.
iPhone 8.
Okay, cool. Gentlemen, thank you very much. That is our time. I'm going to hand back to Aki. Do not go anywhere. We've got a gift for each of you. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You know, Jan Vermeulen always asks everybody what the internet connections they're using, but nobody asks what you're using, Mr. Vermeulen.
I recently migrated to Mind the Speed on Frogfoot and
Yeah.
100 megabit per second symmetrical.
Wow, okay.
It's good stuff.
And how much data are you using a month?
I don't count. I don't have to. It's great. Like it changes the whole way you think of the internet.
Yeah.
Like you know, if I want to watch something, I sit down in front of the TV. I stream something. I don't have to hoard stuff anymore.
Yeah. But it's amazing how your patterns change, right, guys? I mean, I was doing like an audit on what I've got connected at home and what I'm using everything for, and you think, why would you want so much speed, and why would you want to, you think that 100 gigs is enough, but 100 gigs is not enough in a normal environment, So I'm using 200 up, 200 down.
Nice.
And I just love the speed, and I mean, it's my spoil, so where are the guys from Cool Ideas?
Probably at their stand.
They're at their stand. Well, so I use Cool Ideas, and I use some of Supersonic stuff, and I use some of Vodacom's fiber as well. So it's great that there's such a variety for consumers to choose from.
It's an
That's what's
amazingly
amazing,
vibrant
right?
industry.
Yeah.
It's incredibly competitive. I don't know how you turn a profit, so well done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, excellent panel. Let's hear it for Jan Vermeulen and the panelists. Thank you very much. Thanks, Calvin. Thank you. Nice, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There's some fruit juice for you guys to enjoy. Okay, folks, we are going to take a lunch break. Jan did say we're running a few minutes behind schedule, but please, we're going to try and start promptly at 1 o'clock. Lunch is sponsored by MTN, so give them a big round of applause, please. And don't forget, just after lunch, Jan is going to be giving away the MyBroadband Awards. We've got some fantastic prizes, so keep that media going, the social media. It's hashtag MyBroadbandConference. We got a prize for the best tweets as well. So keep those tweets coming through, hashtag MyBroadbandConference. Thank you very much. We'll see you back here at 1 o'clock.